mathematics, even the real numbers, are predicated upon certain mathematical assumptions like Peano's axioms, or even when you get into more advanced types of maths with ZFC theory. So you can pick and choose which axioms you want from ZFC. If I don't want the axiom of choice, I don't have to take the axiom of choice. So is the axiom of choice foundational? No, but is it foundational if I have a consistent mathematical framework that incorporates ZFC? Then yes, it would be foundational. So it's kind of a hard question to ask. What do we mean by foundational? It has to be within the paradigm, I think, of the system, because we already know there are a lot of the logics out there that don't even relationships where if two systems or two objects have the same properties, then they're the same object. Or if they have the same object, they'll have the same properties. They're indiscernible from each other. To me, foundational in any logical system, especially ontologically self, an apple is an apple. I don't even know ontologically what it would mean to say that statement could ever be false. But I think we're going way past the. I think we're sorry, Jen. We're probably going way more deeper than we should be. But it's a great question.
Well, the good news is I absolutely adore this conversation topic, and I'm really happy that you covered it. The bad news is my streaming software crashed the last like 10 minutes.
It died.
We're live again. I hope it'll be okay from now on, but it did die, and I'm really sorry about that.
It's all good.
I had a guy tell me today that he does metaphysics without the law of identity. What do you think about that?
That would be really interesting.
His whole metaphysics is that change exists and that relations exist. And I tried to say that necessarily presupposes the ontology of objects in order to identify.
Are you talking about John Richards?
What do you think about that?
There's a guy named John Richards who's an atheist who just doesn't seem to understand.
No, it was just it was a guy named Hera in a debate server.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that you can actually deny for the law of identity, although he tries to make it a temporal thing, that over time things change. So you go from A to non-A kind of thing, or an apple decays and so it's no longer an apple. But I mean, he misses the fundamental understanding that there is no temporal component in the law of identity. It has nothing to do with the temporal relationship. And so it's just, to me, a gross misunderstanding of law of identity. I just don't see any way that you can get around law of identity. It's funny because it's the one thing that I kind of agree with Matt Pellegrino on, and he's an objectivist. He actually is a big fan of Ayn Rand, who I just can't really stand. I know Cheshire is not really a fan of Ayn Rand, but the one thing we do agree on is that the law of identity seems to be foundational. But anyway, what's the next question? We're gonna move on a little bit.
Well, we've got Kurt Cobain on the stage. Did you want to go ahead with your question?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a. I was revived for this.
Loved your stuff though, man. Great stuff.
Yeah, I was revived for this AMA. No, I just wanted to say I really appreciate you coming to the AMA, and I was gonna give you a comment about. I used to be a young Earth creationist. I used to be a follower of Ken Hovind, and the debate between Aaron Ra and Ken Hovind was what led me away from the young Earth creationist position. So I just wanted to thank you for that debate, and just keep doing your thing. And
wow, that's awesome, man. Thank you. That means a lot. When I hear people say that they were influenced, because we get a lot of shit. Straight up, Kesha and I both get a lot of people that just, one, they don't understand the topics. They're absolutely I would say evil people that just rather go after people, attack them personally, that have stalked us for a very long time. But all of that seems to kind of go away when we hear, hey, you've influenced me. My first debate that I ever had was with Wayne Fillmore, who left Young Earth Creationism after we.
I don't know why, but I can't hear Steve. Sorry. I'll try to fix it and mute in the meantime.
How to come back in. That seems to fix it for Discord. But he left Young Earth Creationism and never looked back. And so I have people all the time saying, look, I decided to go back to school because I was reading your stuff and it made me want to be more interested in these topics. I'm working on my PhD now because of you. I've had numerous people doing that. One right now that should be finishing up pretty soon that went back a lot. And I think he even said he's going to work on his thesis that incorporates some of my stuff. But that means a lot to me. It really, 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 really does, Kurt, that, that one video that we did, something that we did online, had that much of an impact to change the mind of somebody so fundamentally, because younger creationism is a hard thing to get out of, just like flat earth. People that think the earth is flat, it's hard to change those people's minds. It really, really is. I mean, there's a cognitive dissonance there because sometimes they'll think to themselves, okay, the science says this, but I've been told this, this, and this. I'm like, well, yeah, but maybe you're not being told the truth here. I mean, do some of your own reading and understanding and think about things. And unfortunately, we still to this day see a lot of creationists out there that just refuse to do that. We see a lot of people that, I mean, I talk to them all the time on Twitter where, oh, here's the creationist argument. I'm like, yeah, but this has been debunked. This is not something that even remotely says what you think it says. So anyways, man, I like I said, it means a lot when I hear those kind of things. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Steve, and have a good day, and thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks, buddy.
We've got Gaspar back. I see he's unmuted, so go right ahead.
Is it? Okay, so tell me if this is, well, I hope this isn't like a bad question, but it just popped in my head just now. Is Steve Hoyt still in your circles, and do you still talk to him?
Yeah, I unblocked him a while back. He's back in the Great Debate community. He can be a little overbearing, because, and it's so funny because I'm I adore Ozzy, right? I mean, Ozzy is just a hell of a great guy, and he and I both kind of don't understand Stephen Hoyt sometimes, and he gets very, very aggressive when you don't understand him. It's like, look, maybe try to explain and live in a way, because I think he does. I mean, he's like me a little bit. I mean, we do try to push buttons. I'm not going to say that I don't in the atheist community. Of course, I'm pushing buttons because I want them to think for themselves. I want them to stop being just as ideological fundamentalists as you see with these radicalized creationists and radicalized flat earthers and evangelicals, because I see no difference between any of them when they just promote things that are demonstrably and logically false, and they do so anyways just because they've been indoctrinated to do so. And so I understand that want to get people to think, but some of the things he says, corresponding evidence that's not particularly the case. And it's instead of arguing, hey, I recognize this may not be the case, but I'm going to argue it this way to kind of do this, and this, which is perfectly fine. It doesn't do that every so often, if that makes sense. And it kind of, he makes it a lot more, this is the way it is, rather than, hey, it may not be held this way in philosophy, but I'm going to argue this to kind of change it, which is perfectly fine in philosophy. Do that. That's how things change, right? People argue with opinion pieces. And I've read, I have part of his thesis. He's working on his thesis for his, I believe is it for his bachelor's or master's? I don't remember, but it's a very hard read because I don't know what he's really trying to argue. So maybe that might be on my end. I mean, as far as like him knowing about epistemology, sure, that's what he does. Maybe he just has an approach that's different than mine that I kind of disagree with, or maybe he's more like me than I realize. Who knows?
I see. Yeah.
What do you think of that? Yeah, I mean, you've interacted with him and you interacted with me?
I like Steve Hoyt. I even like his temperament. I like how he's ready to, he's ready to troll a little bit, and but I don't know. So I'm really, I really take what we would call professional philosophy. I don't know, with a grain of salt, man, because there's times where it seems to me like it's dysfunctional. There's times where it seems like good stuff comes out of it. There's times where it seems dysfunctional to me. That's all I can say.
I think that's kind of the current. I don't think that's inconsistent with most philosophers probably say.
Well, and some people who are creatures of the institutions are ready to wave around their different view. I have a marketplace consumer views. Like, I'm the customer, so I'm always right. You tell me why I should swallow your bullshit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
the funniest part is that I don't have any radical views. My positions in philosophy are pretty commonplace. I'm a compatibilist. I'm a I'm a modal anti-realist. I do tend to more realism. These are all basically, I'm vanilla when it comes to philosophy. I really don't have any really majorly divergent or on a fringe ideas and beliefs per se. They're all within a kind of I would think in a standard range. And so when I put out information when it comes to epistemology and atheism, this stuff is not contested in philosophy. I mean, you've seen the stuff I put out. What I put out is normative. And yet I get so much backlash from atheists who don't understand the topic, who will sit there and tell me, oh, the only thing you know about atheism is lack of belief and anything else is irrelevant. I'm like, well, then you're just an idiot, for one. And two, you have no business having a conversation with anybody, because what are you going to talk about? That's all you think it is. If you go take a course in atheology, which is a real subject that's actually taught in the course, in college and university level. If you think that you're going to take a course in atheology and the question is like, what is atheism? Atheism is just a lack of belief. I get an A+. Good luck with that. That's what they think.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I understand.
What else you got, Jen?
Let's see here. Quantum Foam would like to know your opinion on the PSR, or principle of sufficient reason.
I do kind of tend to a weak version of the principle of sufficient reason. I do not tend to a strong one. I think it's almost like kind of self-refuting. Obviously, if you have there's different, by the way, the principle of sufficient reason is a complete family of principles. It's not one specific thing. And so there's different versions of it as far as your strengths and weaknesses when it goes to modal relationships. And I particularly think that, sure, if you want to have a weak version of it, that everything has some kind of reason to it within our ability to understand, but there might be things that are so far biologically impossible for us to understand because we have inherent limitations, because of the way we filter and process information. We may never understand what the reason is for something. But in a strong case, I think it is self-refuting, because one, you have to demonstrate that the principle of sufficient reason itself has a principle of sufficient reason, has a sufficient reason to exist, which I think is a very difficult thing to do. And so we also have in occasions that there are things that have no reasons to them. I particularly have the belief that when it comes to certain things in physics, has no causality, no causal relationships. And so even though that for years and decades, there was a fundamental thing in Aristotelian viewpoints and Newtonian physics that everything that had an action had a cause for that action, right? A cause and effect. Every effect had a cause. I think we're learning now that in certain types of quantum mechanical relationships, that doesn't necessarily hold true. I do hold that when it comes to things like virtual particles, when it comes to or virtual particle production, or weak nuclear decay, or spontaneous fission, there is nothing to be had as far as a causality to cause these things. There are no local hidden variables that exist, because that's been kind of excluded mathematically, because it doesn't satisfy Bell's inequality. So to me, I just say, look, there's no information available in that system to be had. There is no causation to it. It just happens as some kind of brute fact that it happens. I don't subscribe to the reason that there has to be some kind of reasons why this particular atom decayed and this particular reason didn't, because there may not be a reason. And quantum mechanics, I think, basically says there is no reason. We can't know there's a reason because there's nothing to be known. There's no information in that system be even evaluated. It's no hidden variables in that system. Those are all the local hidden variable models have been discounted. The only ones that seem to have any kind of validity are global hidden variables, which are going to be like pilot wave theory. So I don't subscribe to the principle of sufficient reason. I do know a lot of Christians that do, but I don't think they have justification for it. A very long-winded answer first, but these are not simple questions. I was not expecting this. I didn't prepare for any of this, Jen.
I think your answers so far are super interesting and cogent and well thought out. I do appreciate that. I've given this some thought myself. It's far from self-evident what to do with this PSR thing. Jack of Hearts asks, I don't know.
What's that, Jen? And what you should do is, like I said, there's not just one form of PSR. There's many different types of PSR, and so you might be thinking, hey, this one version of PSR maybe a little bit more makes sense than any kind of a stronger version. And then, by the way, what we mean by reason is a very big topic, because we're talking about a metaphysical grounding for something, and then you started getting into things like the four causes by Aristotle's four causes. What do we mean by a cause? Is it a formal cause? Is it an efficient cause? Is it a material cause? What do we mean by a cause? This is why Gasper was saying philosophy, it's a very difficult subject, but it kind of gets you into roadblocks sometimes, because you have to be specific on what you're referring to, because one person may say, hey, look, I'm going to take a causation to me a material cause, and the other one says, I'm going to take it to be an efficient cause, I'm going to take it to be a formal cause. And you have to be able to understand what they're meaning by, is this the metaphysical grounding that is sufficient to say we have a reason for this particular event to satisfy PSR. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have this very same discussion with Dr. Sijawade in March. He's coming on, if you're familiar with him. He had a discussion on this with Aaron Raw and decimated Aaron on it, go figure. But yeah, I would look into the, like I said, different understandings of the PSR and go from there. But anyways, sorry. I'm caffeinated. Forgive me.
Speaking of really easy questions with really obvious answers, why call a math proof God? I don't know if that was directed at you, but feel free to take a crack at it if you'd like.
I would never do so. I don't believe God exists, but okay, so here's the way I kind of explain this when it comes to mathematical proofs per se, right? So, yeah. All right, so as Plantinga notes, and I'm not a huge fan of Plantinga's argumentation, but I mean, he's a very learned guy. But he'll have something like a disjunction. They'll say it is either the case that 7 plus 5 is 14, or 7. I'm trying to think exactly what he uses because I have a. What does he use? I think he uses 7 plus 5. Whatever. So it's either the case 7 plus 5 is 14, or God exists. It is not the case that 7 plus 5 equals 14. Therefore, God exists. Now, that is a valid disjunction, right? And he would argue as a Christian is actually sound, because he actually believes that God exists. Therefore, the disjuncts would be the case where the God exists is a true disjunct. Therefore, by the disjunctive syllogism, by eliminating the one that's false, which is the 7 plus 5, it has a true conclusion. So he would say that that would be a valid and sound argument, but recognizes that is not a proof, because a same person could say 7 plus 5 equals 14, or God does not exist. 7 plus 4 equals 14 is false, therefore God does not exist. And to somebody who's an atheist, they would say that's valid and sound. Now, it is the case that one of them must be true. It must be the case that one of those is valid and sound, but we have no idea which one it actually is. It is a matter of belief that it is sound, because I believe nobody knows whether God exists or not. I don't think that anybody does, right? But until we have that knowledge and say which one it is, but one of those is a valid and sound proof. It has to be the case, but we don't know which one it is the proof. So we say that neither are the proof, the way Plantinga would argue that. So I don't think you can prove God into existence by some kind of mathematical proof, and certainly no mathematical proof would be a God. That would not be constitutive of what we even mean by the word God.
Not sure if this is a question, but Detroyer says propositional logic doesn't even have identity, so you can't formulate the law of identity in it. And I apologize,
that's true.
Been brought up.
That's true, actually. The law of excluded middle, the law of non-contradiction, propositional. The law of identity is not propositional. That is true. But it is true.
Could you apply that to if you were defining God then? Because I think that kind of goes back to what we were asking and talking about before, is about how would you have rules or expectations or understandings of a deity or a God without the law of identity. And so if you're using that, would that be applicable?
I don't know what you're asking.
Well, get better, Steve.
I mean, a law of identity is literally just saying that something isn't itself. That's all it's saying. Now, again, that's not based on any kind of proposition, because there's no propositional value to be had there. If you look at the law of identity, all of x equals x equals x, that's not propositional. It's just
so the
saying
answer
that something
is, the answer is no, it wouldn't be applicable because it's addressing a different question.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go with that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. But like somebody said, they said that the law of identity is not something that's foundational in propositional logic in that regard, because it's something you can't derive it propositionally. I can derive LEM and LNC from each other. I have actually on one of my blogs, I show in proof how to derive one from the other. You cannot do that from law of identity. It's something that is axiomatically assumed, but it is considered to be what's called a traditional law of thought, or a rule of inference, or it's not even a rule of inference. It's just a law. It's identity law, but it's something you cannot actually derive propositionally. Yeah. So I mean, they're right on that. Sure.
I'm not sure if anyone would like to come up. I see Gaspar is unmuted, so if you wanted to take it away with any other questions, I'm coming to the end of there's so much in the chat there, so if people still have questions, please re-ask them. See, the conversation been flowing a lot, and anyone in our Discord audience would like to join, please raise your hand. Don't be shy now. All right.
I mean, I got questions for Steve. Why did you have me
Sure.
making thumbnails for the last, like, 3 hours?
We're gonna use them.
You passive-aggressive piece
you
of...
had, it literally is like your one job.
Oh, one job. Okay. I only do one job. I only do 95%.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But my 5%, I'm getting done.
Glorious.
Sort of. What I do is I do my 5% and say, okay, here, you do the rest.
I saw an interesting question that I saw way earlier, and I don't know if he covered it while I was taking the dog out, but it was about why Steve talks about atheism and definitions so much. And I think part of the answer is that you're not really talking about definitions. I think that's a misnomer.
I think that this argument from definitions is completely ridiculous. It's something that I've never done. People that say I have, none of them have any evidence that I've ever done such a thing, because I'm the one that's telling people don't argue from a dictionary. That's been my argument for several years. But I use atheism as a vehicle because I very much want to be considered somebody who at least some form of critical thinker. I think that most people that call themselves skeptics in the colloquial sense want to be treated as people that have rational thought and that are critical thinkers. But then I see people that do not apply the same standards across the board, and especially when things that conflict with their preconceived notions. And atheism is a very good tool to point out to people that they may not be the critical thinkers that they think they are. When in fact mathematics is the same way. I have a very specific thing that I talk about when it comes to mathematics, because I believe mathematics is objective. I believe that if you and I go out and we learn math, we're going to come to the same conclusions based upon the principles of mathematics. It is objectively the case that we can figure out how to solve something if both you and I know the principles of mathematics, the rules of math, the algorithms and things of that nature. We will always get the same conclusion every single time. It's objective.
I'm going to scroll up real quick and find the other half of the question. Sorry, continue.
Sure. And so one of the things I bring up all the time is the relationship between 0.999 repeating and 1. They are the exact same number. There's no difference between them at all as far as value. They're just symbols.
Hold on a minute. Can you see why someone, not to be devil's advocate here, but can you see how someone would disagree with that on principle?
Yes, but it's fine to disagree. But when you're shown the mathematical proofs in multiple different ways, then you have to
agree with these suppositions of the proofs. There's no such thing as a math proof that doesn't have any suppositions with it.
Absolutely.
Or de facto axiom.
But when you deny those suppositions, you're denying real analytics, right? You're saying, hey, look, I am denying all of math, rather than say to yourself, maybe I have a fundamental misunderstanding. Maybe when I read a paper that says, hey, look, one of the most common misconceptions in math is, and as a psychological effect, is this particular problem. And they have done studies on why students do not accept this relationship. It's a psychological effect that they have actually studied on why they have certain students have a hard time processing certain mathematical concepts. Well, sure, you have to accept certain underlying axioms and certain underlying foundational things in maths, but that's real analytics, right? So they're saying, look, real analytics is wrong. They're right, rather than saying, you know what, maybe I do have a misunderstanding here. Maybe I should learn this better. It is objective, right? And so to me, a person who's saying I'm willing to throw away all the mathematics for my belief is pretty well exactly what a young earth creationist would do by saying, hey, look, I'm willing to throw away all of science, all of phylogeny, all of cladistics, all of radiometric dating, all of geology, all of everything that I've ever learned about science in order to maintain my faith-based belief that God created the earth 7,000 years ago. To me, there is no difference. And so I use that relationship, which I can prove in many different ways, through calculus, through algebra, through geometric progression, and explain it exceptionally well why this is the case to somebody who wants to understand. But a lot of people who say they want to understand, they say they are open-minded, they are not. Matter of fact, it goes back to the whole atheist when an atheist says, look, I don't believe there's a God, but I'm willing to change my mind, give them enough evidence. They're lying when they say that if they're not willing to accept mathematical truths that go against their ideological preconceived notions. If they're not willing to accept an objective fact like math, I'm going to say that they're outright lying, that if they had proof of God, that they're going to believe it. I think it's just lip service at that point. So I use these types of relationships to kind of point these inconsistencies out in people that say that they're critical thinkers, because anybody who knows math knows that 0.99 repeating and 1 are the exact same value. There is no difference. It's like saying 1/2 equals 0.5, and there's, again, multiple different ways to get there. But when you sit there and you explain to somebody, look, I'm going to explain to you the math, I'm going to teach you about sequences and limits of sequences and series and all this fun stuff, which I have on my channel. I do explain these types of calculus concepts on my channel. And then they say, well, math must be wrong. Are they really somebody who has a what's called a virtue epistemology, open-mindedness? No, I don't think so, because they're literally denying objective fact.
I saw a question that I didn't want to flub, so I figured I would just invite Vortigaunt up to ask it. Do you mind?
Good.
You there?
Yeah.
I thought of it like this. So we can say, you said that the law of identity cannot be derived, right? You said that it has to be accepted as axiomatic.
I think so. I don't think you could derive propositionally. Can you?
Propositionally, of course not. It's not even expressible. But
yeah.
What I want to say is this. So let's talk about like what equality is. When we say the two things are equal, what we actually mean, or at least what I mean when I say that A equals B, is that A and B have the same property.
Properties, sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the equal symbol means a relationship, especially when you get into mathematics of what we mean by set theory, how we do these relationships. So A equals B is saying that the properties of A equal the property of B, not the symbols are the same, right?
Mm.
Yeah, so I probably, yeah, absolutely. That's what they're talking. Equal sign does not mean the exact same thing. Equal sign means a relationship, right? And a equivalence. It's actually literally what's called a set equivalence, right?
Yes.
So
I
agree with that.
I want to put it formally, like formally speaking, I would say that for every predicate P of X, A equals B if and only if for every predicate P of X, P of A is true if and only if P of B is true. And the predicate signifies a property. So
the properties are the same, sure.
Yeah.
Isn't that Leibniz, indistinguishability of indiscernibilities?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm totally okay with that.
If I want to prove that for all A equals A from that, can't I just say that because in classical propositional logic, P of A, if and only if P of A is a tautology, so for every predicate P of A, if and only if P of A, therefore A equals A for all A. Isn't that a valid proof?
I have no problem with that. But my thing was that it's not done through propositional logic, right? Yeah, sure, you can derive it that
you
way.
mean that it's not derivable with propositional logic, but it is derivable with Leibniz's indiscernible?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Because I thought you disagreed with it. So thank you.
No. Thank you for pointing that out, the difference. Yes. We're getting deep here. I thought I was just coming on to say, hey, what's up, people? But no, we're getting into like some deep stuff here. Even Cheshire's going, what the hell are you talking about?
Well, that's what it means to be the vanguard.
It's all good. No, look, I really don't get a chance to talk about a lot of this stuff very often. So, I mean, I'm kind of thrilled to. But again, I want to make it very clear. Don't come to me as far as like an expert on anything. I'm not. I'm a layperson as hell when it comes to this stuff. I just think I have a pretty decent understanding of the basics. And I like to think that I can communicate some of the basics pretty decently, especially when it comes to like things I talk about a lot, which is atheism and 0.99 repeat equals 1. I can explain that pretty decently, I think, but I am not an expert in these topics by any stretch of imagination. I've had mathematical training to some degree, and I had even some philosophy way back when on informal logical fallacies. But I just want to make sure that nobody thinks to themselves that I am an expert in this. I am not. But I tend to have the people that are experts agree. Doesn't mean that I'm right. Just means that I'm kind of in line with the general understanding of this stuff. I mean, Vortigaunt there clearly knew his stuff. I mean, he clearly knew somebody. He obviously has training in logic, right? And we were able to communicate on a level that would make sense to each other because we understand the nomenclature. And that's what I kind of want to express to other people, is that if they're going to get in these topics of discussions, at least try to understand what the topics are. You don't have to be an expert in it. You could be a layperson myself. And if you don't understand something, ask. Say, what do you mean by that? Can you describe that better? There's nothing wrong with that. And I love the fact that he came in and tried to clarify that. And I think that more people should have those kind of conversations. That's what Chester and I really think. I think want to foster in the Non-Sequitur show is having those types of dialogues where you could communicate and educate people, even from a very lay perspective. Speaking of lay people, hi, Rez.
Yeah, go ahead, Rez. Thanks for joining.
What's up, bud?
Not much. Can you guys hear me?
I can.
Okay.
I can listen to your accent all
I
day
had a
long. You know
very
that.
simple question to ask. How do you arrive at the number 1 from 0?
Those axioms. Or are you going to use von Neumann ordinals? Did you think you're going to stump me on that? Is that what you think you're going to do? Okay. But yeah, that's how I would do it. Pino's axioms, obviously, I think there's 5 of them that start off with 0. But you can do ordinal sets with von Neumann ordinals to say, okay, one in the set, empty set.
Steve,
yes.
What's an ordinal?
An ordinal is a counting number.
Okay, so like 1, 2, 3.
No. Okay, so first and second and third would be.
This is my job, by the way. This is what I'm here to do.
So if I say first, second, and third, those are ordinal relationships. That makes sense, right? That makes sense. First, second, third.
Sure.
Yep.
And then so when you have a von Neumann set, which by the way I've never really got into, so just bear with me. But when you have a von Neumann type of nomenclature, you start with an empty set. Then as you start adding elements to the set, those can be derived to be 0, 1, 2, 3 for that set relationship. Then you would have obviously your ordinals, which are first, second, third, fourth, and whatever. I'm not a mathematician, Rez.
It's very difficult, but it's basically just, if I could quickly add something in a diagram, this notion that we can't really point to two-ness the way we can point to a house. Two-ness, three-ness, four-ness.
These are abstract quantities, right? I mean, so the number 2, the way I think of it, the number 2 exists somewhere on the real number line. Whether that real number line has ontology or not, in some kind of Platonic realm, that's up to the philosophy people to determine if they want to take that on board or not. I mean, I have no problem either way. I really don't. If you want to think of it as mathematical Platonism, there are very good arguments to do so. There are very good arguments to accept nominalism, I think, as well. I'm sure Gasper could relate, both of them, both sides of the argument. But there is no right answer to it. Both Gasper and I have agree. There's nothing we can go, hey, look, this has to be the case. This is how I wanted to think about these things in order to have my paradigm, my world view of things. And so when we talk about the number 2, to me, it's some abstract quantity, some value that exists on the real number line. And when we see the number 2, right, when we see that symbol, it's called a signifier, or that numeral or that number, the symbol itself, it just represents a position on that real number line, whether it's like the symbol 0 as a circle, right? That's just a circle. It just represents something. That 0.99 repeating, it's just a symbol that means the same symbol as 1 that represents the position of 1 on the real number line. So people confuse a lot between the symbols and the values, and they're not the same thing. The symbol points to a value, it's a reference to a referent. And I think excuse me, my coffee, I beg pardon. A lot of people have a hard time differentiating between the symbol itself and the value that symbol represents. Hopefully makes sense.
Absolutely. It's the classic map territory dichotomy. Rez,
exactly. And by the way, that's exactly the case. People do confuse, and I love that. I love this. One of my favorite expressions, that people do confuse the map with the territory because it happens so frequently, more than probably people realize.
Now, I'm not sure if Rez lost. Can you hear? Okay, it looks like Rez is off. And okay. Did you have more questions?
No, all I needed to hear was 0.999 repeating equals 1.
Because he agrees.
Kind of sounds like a rap song, doesn't it? Go ahead, Gaspar.
Yeah, that's, what? Should we put it to music, man? Yeah, let's do that.
No worries, thank you.
Gasper. He's speechless. You see this?
I had okay.
It
seems like an audio issue. Perhaps.
Sorry.
There you go.
No. It was I had my headset mute.
I was gonna say, if you agree with me, just don't say anything. There you go.
I wanted to ask. And okay, feel free to decide you don't want to talk about this either. Do you have NonSequitur back at this point?
Oh yeah, where you been? We're already streaming. We're already doing shows.
Hello.
okay.
Our
My
next show is
co-host,
going to
Cheshire.
be I have every expectation that our next show is going to be a
Dumpster.
complete dumpster fire.
Yeah,
We've
the,
been.
the next show is going to be old school non-sequitur. When you guys want old school non-sequitur, trust me. Next episode on the 28th, expect things.
We've been like slowly ramping up and like kind of getting things scheduled and set up ahead of time, so it's taken us a little while to get we have to demonstrate the show is back before we can actually properly schedule some crazy nonsense. And oh boy, crazy nonsense next show, crazy nonsense the show after that, the next month, that other whole different kind of crazy nonsense. It's gonna be.
We got some guests coming in to talk about some crazy stuff. We needed, Chess did have to have a very high learning curve for VMix. She learned the fundamentals of VMix in about 4 hours and over in a couple days, and so it's a progressive learning curve for her. So the first couple shows, obviously, we fully expected to be anything but flawless. We were even remotely expecting
I was
perfection.
Okay, Steve stressed the hell out of me right before we went live last night. So I'm like, I had turned off a button while I was clicking around without even realizing I had touched it, which is why we were muted at the beginning. It took me a minute to figure it out. It's kind of funny.
yeah, but
Okay.
it's okay. We expect things like that to happen.
All right, so I have a question. Do you still do the Great Debate Community channel? And if so, of what relationship is the Great Debate Community to Non-Sequitur?
Yeah, so I do have the Great Debate Community channel, and we're going to be...
Good question.
We do after shows. Like last night, we had Lana Kurt Noel on with Dapper Dino, and we were talking about Chernobyl and SL1, the army reactor that went prompt critical. Now, Dapper and I both were ex-nukes, so we do have a pretty decent, I think, understanding of basic reactor kinematics and physics. And then Landon actually worked on a lot of this stuff. I mean, he studied under Feynman and Hawking, so he's no slouch to these things. And then the after show we did on the Great Debate Community. And so it's kind of a catch-all channel. I use the Great Debate Community for playing games, just for having Discord, just kind of like, just to hang out kind of stuff, just whatever. And then on my main channel, I have reviews that I do. Like I've reviewed Arn Ra's video. Well, it wasn't his video, but if he had a discussion with 3 Muslims on, if something is a necessary being, and he got eviscerated. That one did okay. That one got like 12,000 likes or 12,000 views or something. But I use it for philosophy, math, and whatever I want. I mean, basically, my channel is whatever I want to stream on. That's it. There's no rhyme or reason. Nobody can tell me what I can and cannot stream about. If I want to talk about something, I want to talk about something. It could be, talking about what's happening in the community. It could be saying, talking about, hey, this person's a real piece of crap, and I want to explain to people why he's a piece of crap. Or I can just be going, hey, let's talk about science.
I don't know if that totally answers the question, though, because part of the question was like, what is the relationship between the GDC and the Non-Sequitur show? And from what I can tell is that the we can't stream for hours upon hours upon hours on Non-Sec. Yeah. So it's supposed to be a contained show, and when we can do Q&As, we want to be able to do Q&As, but we can't always do that because of how complex the topic can be, or what's going on with the guests, or the way the show kind of goes. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. And on times that we can't, and in times when there's like another thing that's maybe more time sensitive, pressing, relevant, like the current volcano, when we happen to have somebody who's a volcanologist on, that's where the GDC comes in to be able to allow a more free, because Non-Sequitur is formatted. There are limitations to what that show can and cannot do and cannot handle within its format. Whereas the GDC is far more like open form, far more like, here's the link for a larger number of people. It's far more like a round circle discussion, whereas Non-Sequitur is more of like a program type show.
Yeah, I think
If that makes
see.
sense.
Yeah, so the GDC isn't really related to NonSequitur. It was kind of the early days. They're kind of tied together.
It's more
but-
of a matter of convenience at this
Sure.
point. It'll be one of those like, hey, listen, if it makes sense for the after show to be on the GDC because we want to be able to drag in as many people, like more people that we think
General
are
stuff,
relevant
yeah,
to the conversation. Versus like, I don't know, maybe if Steve has a tangent that was related to the show that he wants to talk about, that might just go on his channel. Or if it's something that's more related to something that, I don't know, maybe aren't related for some reason. I don't know why it would be that. But if it's something more in my direction, or maybe I have a tangent I want to talk about, then it would end up on my channel. But
well, like if we ever did a stream on non-fungible tokens, I think that'd be far more appropriate on your channel than mine, because one, I have no interest in it, and two, it's artsy, which is kind of your jam. So, but I think that would be something that why would we? Well, I don't know why we'd have a stream on NFTs, anyways. But it's suppose that we did, then it would be more on your channel. So, did that answer your question? That it's just the GDC is just a catch-all channel. I mean, like I said, I'll play games on it for Pete's sake. A cesspool on there and a couple other things that I randomly do, but it's not supposed to have any kind of set format to it. It's just whatever the hell I want. It's my channel.
Oh, nice. Can I come on those channels sometime?
Sure. We have open hangouts all the time, man. Yeah, I mean, I've been being bugged that I need to do a rum and coke. It's been a long time since
it has been a while since a rum and coke.
I know. Kano's been, like, you need to do rum and coke.
Kano is correct.
I know. She's very rarely not correct, but I will probably make that happen. And that's just an open thing where people come on and we just kind of talk whatever we want. And it's kind of fun because the rum and cokes can get really, really entertaining, to be honest with you. Straight up fun. So.
Matic was wondering what you thought about Neoplatonism.
I don't really get into Thomism and Neoplatonism and all that kind of stuff. I don't know much about the Thomistic viewpoint and how it relates to Neoplatonism. It just seems to be a lot of convoluted words to try to explain simple concepts, and that I'm not that familiar with the terminology. I mean, here's how you talk to a Neoplatonist: actuality, potentiality. That's all you gotta do. It's so I really have no view on.
Do you have to sprinkle it with some doxastic attitudes?
Yes. No, I like doxastic attitudes. That actually, I do use that. but I don't even know. Like I said, I used to try to learn some of the lingo that they use, but it just seems so esoteric to try to learn a very specific type of linguistics, only to have a conversation about these really, really obscure and esoteric terminology that hasn't been used in a very long time. That's just me. Whatever. Have you tried learning about it? I mean, are you familiar with some of those oddball terms? Because they're some weird stuff. Noumenon is hard enough. Phenomenon and noumenon. I mean,
I'm familiar with some of these subjects from a different perspective, not really ancient Greece or Hellenic thought at all. So I say I'm a Platonist almost as a joke. Sort of shoehorn in my own ideas, because Platonism is the only thing that remotely resembles my own ideas.
Yeah, like I said, I have no problem with certain forms of Platonism. If somebody asks me, "Are you a nominalist?" I'll probably, I end up probably saying yes, just because it's easier. Straight up, is easier for me to probably defend. But I'm not married to either one of them. But if you ask me, is there a realm that exists, ontological presence, that has these archetype forms? I'm not so much going to hold to that. But if we want to think about them conceptually as being something real, yeah, I mean, because again, like, are dreams real? Oh no, they have no real ontology, right? They don't correspond to anything that happens in the real world, but they are a phenomenological effect. They are real in that essence in the conceptual domain, right? So it's a matter, again, as Gasper and I were trying to point out, philosophy is messy, and it's really how you really want to think of certain things that fits your overall coherentism or web of beliefs that makes sense to you. There is really no right or wrong answer to say dreams are real if you're meaning it in a very specific sense, because in that sense, dreams are real in that they do exist, in that you have them. You cannot have something that doesn't exist, right? It doesn't make any sense to say, I haven't had a dream last night, but it doesn't exist in some capacity, in some measure. To make that expression meaningful, it has to exist in a certain way. It doesn't mean it has ontological presence. These are the philosophical concepts that I find the most interesting because they are profound in how you think about reality and what it means to even have some kind of real ontological presence. And this is why I kind of have a fascination toward what's called mereological nihilism, and that things may not exist. They just are rearrangements of primitives. And what does it mean to have a rearrangement of primitives? Does it make sense to say that the ship of Theseus exists? And it's just arrangements of parts. And if you change all the parts into the same ship, put it to a mereological lionist, no, the ship never existed in the first place. Because in that context, there's no such thing as the ship, right? So, isn't philosophy great? This is why we all need to be sitting having scotch.
I don't think it necessarily follows from mereological nihilism that the ship has no existence. But it does appear to be unfalsifiable. At least some type of non-dualism is pretty easy to establish in comparison to other positions. Quantum Foam would like to know if you're a Fregen or Millionist with respect to proper names.
I would have. Okay, so I do believe. Okay, this is way beyond my purview, but I do think there are something called rigid designators that exist for proper names. I think Frege and Geach have some very interesting approaches on some of the things that they talk about when it comes to what I have an interest in, which is called rejectionism. But as far as like rigid body designators and proper names, I think Kripke has some good arguments for that. But that gets into very, very deep things with I hate pronouncing it, but salvus verdi, if that's how you pronounce the term. My Latin is horrible, but when you get into translucent properties, principles of translucent opaque, whether proposition has the ability to have something instantiated in it with it that will change the truth value or not. Do these things hold to proper names and to rigid designators? Yeah, I mean, I find it interesting. So maybe I do tend to fray, but that's something that I really don't have any real deep understanding of to really kind of get into. It's just something that tangentially you kind of learn when you look into philosophy, I guess. But I do understand the difference between opaque and transparent, obviously. Whether a proposition holds its truth value or not, if you change it between like Hesperus and Phosphorus is the canonical one, the morning star versus the evening star. If I can say, look, I believe that the morning star, rises in the east doesn't necessarily mean I believe that Venus is rising in the east, because I may not understand that the morning star is the same as Venus. So if I change the proposition to I believe Venus is rising in the east, it changes the truth value if I don't understand that that designator for the morning star is the same as Venus, or Hesperus is the same as Phosphorus. I'm probably way off base on any of that stuff. So like I said, don't take me as an expert on any of this crap, because this is some really off the wall stuff I'm being asked.
From the YouTube chat, we have a question: if the panel thinks continental philosophy with the narrative structure of explaining things has a place in modern philosophy.
That sounds like something Kawasa would ask.
It was Kawasa.
Yeah.
Wow, your question diagnosis perception is unrivaled.
Yeah, I'm psychic. I do tend to analytical philosophy, right? But this whole continental philosophy and this divergence between Western and Eastern philosophy is grand. It is huge. Eastern philosophy to me is way different than what we have as far as Western and analytical philosophy. I tried reading Hegel once, and I might as well just be reading Chinese. No freaking idea what the hell Hegel argues as far as if you ever looked at the Hegelian dialectics, no clue. It's like a completely foreign language to me. Don't know what the hell he's arguing. Don't care. Kant, I think, is outdated. Obviously, Kant for his time has some really great ideas, but completely outdated as far as modern analytical philosophy. I definitely reject Kantianism as far as ethical approach. I think there are certain times where it is beneficial to lie for virtue ethics, because the virtue ethics says that, hey, there are such things as virtuous lies. I think they should be minimized at all possible. But anybody who's ever been married probably is going to, even by a lie of omission, not tell your wife that she looks horrible, or your girlfriend horrible in a certain outfit if you ever want to, sleep with her again, kind of stuff. So I do believe virtue ethics has a place as far as I don't want to hurt your feelings. I'm not going to be, brute honesty with you. I'm not going to be harmful in my verbiage to you because I want to save you from having an emotional response, which is to me causing harm. So I think there are reasons to lie, but it should be minimized. But the Kantian would say, no, you never should lie at any time, in any place. And I don't subscribe to that. But yeah, I do tend to more Western philosophy than the continental philosophers would. But it has a place, sure. Does that answer the question, Kawasa? Hopefully, maybe.
We'll have to wait a couple seconds. There's a delay on the YouTube. But in the meantime, Quantum Phone would like to know if you consider yourself a physicalist.
I kind of tend to what's called source physicalism, which isn't necessarily pure physicalism that everything's reduced down to a physical element. Source physicalism would be there is some kind of physicality to stuff, but it does allow for an emergence of a conscious and non-reductive physicalism view. I'm fine with epiphenomena. Well, I would say more eliminated materialism, or what's called source dualism, which is to me just not source dualism, property dualism. But property dualism to me seems more of a monist approach than source dualism that says, oh, look, there is a physical world and then there's a mental world. There are very vastly two different things with two different substances. I don't believe that at all. So I can't really say that I adhere to pure physicalism, because I think that property physicalism, where you have the ability to have different properties that have the mental property and physical property, while it probably does fall under physicalism, I wouldn't say that's a pure form, if that is a decent way of putting it.
Sure, and you have to contend with the fact that physicalism is self-refuting, like most things are at their limit points, because it's an assertion about physics.
Yeah, it's hard to justify pure physicalism. Yeah, it's hard to justify pure physicalism.
Is it math or is it physics that justifies science?
Yeah, well, that's what Quine,
obvious, but it's not.
Quine would come in and kind of argue that, in order for math to be useful in science, it has to be treated as some kind of real existence to the mathematics. But you're right. Is it physics? Is it math? To me, it's all of the above, right? And so I don't think you can reduce, in a reductionist approach, everything down to just physicality. I just don't think that's even a wise way to go. So this, I just don't accept pure physicalism, and I don't think really many people do. I mean, it used to be they used to differentiate between materialism and physicalism, and then people were like, well, "What about forces? Right? Is a force something that's material, or is it physical?" Well, it's physical, right? There's no actual existence of this force. And I mean, you can talk about force carriers and you can talk about intermediate vector bosons and things of that nature. But what actually is a force? I mean, what actually, as far as ontological approach, is it? It's hard to put that into a nutshell in a purely materialistic viewpoint. You can in physicalism, but as far as materialistic, what is the material what is this material for this force? It gets into some very, very profound understandings of what we mean by what is a material, rather than something, the ability to do action, right? Something, the ability to change something would be a force. To impart momentum, to change the vector of a particle is a force, but it's not something that is material.
I've been doing like science inquiry with people and asking them if they think that math can exist. Okay, so I've just given the concept of math, which we know what that is, the symbols and the ideas, versus natural language like English, and saying which one can exist in the absence of the other. Can natural language exist without math, or can math exist without natural language? Everyone said math, even though there's literally no evidence of that. So I was wondering if you could comment on this seeming pattern of people recognizing something in math as more real than reality.
Yeah, I don't know how they would go about doing that. I mean, math itself is still an expression. We still use symbology to express certain kinds of relationship, which we can do obviously through natural language as well. But I don't know how they would justify that. So I really have no answer, to be honest with you. I don't know how they would say one or the other.
Well, they can't, because it all comes down to giving a definition for a language, and who wants to do that? We all just want to be like, it's
yeah. I think Wittgenstein would probably be all over that. Well, Wittgenstein's
exactly.
Wittgenstein's very hard to read too. So
I was wondering, just as you were talking before, if you think that this notion of a Platonic realism or mathematical Platonism or whatever seems to imply moral realism on some level that may be subconscious.
I've heard that there might be ways of relating them. I don't know the arguments for those. I do tend to moral realism, only because I think there's an argument to be had. If you want to talk about morality, it only makes sense to do so in a way that is societal based. And so when you have some kind of moral grounding, like eudaimonia, where you want to ground it in harms and benefits to society, then yeah, then sure, we can make an objective moral framework from that. I do think Matt Dillahunty is exactly right, because he makes that argument, and he based it upon Sam Harris's approach, which I again think is a just fine way to do it. That's how I do it too. But we have to understand that it is a hypothetical imperative, right? It's not a categorical imperative. It is a goal-oriented framework to have objective morality, but a lot of people have issues with that. Well, they're like, well, yeah, but you have arbitrary axioms, and it's that, this, that, and that. I'm like, yeah, so what? I mean, to me, it encapsulates the whole reason to have a moral framework to begin with, because we are agents of moral consideration. What else are we talking about unless we're talking about why we want to do a certain thing as opposed to something else? Why we want to have something that's morally permissible as opposed to something that's morally impermissible, if not for some kind of goal as far as benefit to society? Because again, what differentiates us from a brute animal, or in Orange Rock case, a rock, is what differentiates us? Well, we are moral agents because we've learned to get along with each other in a social environment where we've had years of understanding that these certain things are objectively the case. I mean, if I go around and I would say, look, I want to have a very fruitful society, and I kill every member of that society, it is objectively the case that you are not going to have a fruitful society. It's an objective fact. It is objectively morally wrong in that case to kill every member of your society because it goes against your goal. Boy, we've discussed so many different topics here. Holy cow. I was not expecting this, but I'm thrilled. I love these topics. I think they're fascinating. Because again, nobody take me as as an expert on any of these things. They're just my viewpoints. That's it. Got it? Got any more?
Well, I see Gaspar is unmuted, but you're not coming through, so you might have to rejoin there.
Yeah, I think my my friends who wield their philosophy degrees and credibility as a bludgeon in discussions are quickly overcome with obvious reminders that it's an appeal to authority, or at least questioning how exactly that's relevant. And so I think one thing I liked about Socrates is how he always said he was ignorant. So I think it's often
well, me, man, I'll go after. Look, I don't care if this person's a PhD or works at 7-Eleven. I don't give a damn. I'm only caring about what they're arguing and how they're going about arguing, what they're talking about.
Don't work at 7-Eleven and claim it's your atheist national headquarters.
But I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example today, Gasper, right? Because I'm in a lot of forums, right? And I'm in one that is an admin for a group that is about Aron Ra, who I have the utmost respect for as far as his philogeny, but his philosophy sucks. Everybody knows about philosophy that I've ever talked to would probably agree with that. But I happen to like Aron. I think that he's very good at explaining certain very specific things when it comes to biology, like phylogenetics. So I was in this group with that's dealing with Aron Ra, and somebody had said, well, why do atheists believe that we evolved from monkeys? And so I was trying to explain from my own personal understanding of biology why we did come from monkeys. We are, Catarrhini. We are still old world monkeys. We are, still simiiforms. We're still primates. We don't lose our historical phylogeny because of Meyer's law of monophyly. So I was like, hey, look, we are monkeys. We evolved from monkeys. So what? And I trying to explain it in that kind of a lay perspective. And I had some guy come on who was a zoologist, and he's like, we didn't evolve from monkeys. And I'm like, wait a minute, okay. And so I said, well, this and this is like, well, when you argue with a zoologist and they're telling you that you're wrong, you're just wrong. There is no argument. And I'm like, wait a minute here. No, here's this guy that I'm familiar with who is a zoologist who says we're monkeys. So wait a minute. If I disagree with you and agree with him, I'm by fiat wrong because I'm disagreeing with a zoologist, but you're by fiat wrong because you're disagreeing with that other zoologist over here that says we are monkeys. Because again, I was talking monophyletically, and he's like, well, you're using words like monophyletic and paraphyletic and polyphyletic and all this other stuff. And it's just like, well, you might as well just say we're fish. And I'm like, well, we are fish. We're Sarcoptegia. So I'm like, there's a whole book that Neil Shubin wrote on that very thing. You're inner fish. And by the way, he brought that up. He's like, well, according to Neil Shubin, yeah, but it doesn't make any sense to say you're fish. I'm like, but that wasn't that's what wasn't under consideration. Do I think that we should go around, trying to explain to people that we're fish and monkeys in a non-scientific view? Well, again, it goes to the conversation because tetrapods are removed from that whole line of phylogeny for very specific, reasons. But I think when we're talking about the topics, and when somebody says, "Yeah, we are monkeys," you shouldn't chime in and say, "I'm a zoologist, and if you disagree with me, you're wrong by fiat." I mean, like, no, that doesn't work this way. I'm going to say you're wrong because we are monkeys. Now, if you want to say, "Look, we are monkeys monophyletically, and yes, in this particular aspects we are, but in this particular aspect we're not." Same way we're animals biologically, but we're not animals when we're talking about brute animals, right? We're not brute animals. So when we say, "Look, I'm not an animal," I'm not meaning it biologically speaking. I'm meaning it as I'm not a brute animal because brute animals have removed humans from that category. So you have to be very specific on what category you're talking about. And Arn, I think, has issues differentiating between categorizations like that. Did you agree on that, Casper?
You know what? You do sound like you've had some caffeine, right?
I'm caffeinated.
You're going a little bit faster than I am right now. So
I think it's just like, if I can clarify, it basically just means, and there are reasonable arguments from authority that are not fallacious, and there are ones that are. And so if you're using your degree to bludgeon other people in a field where you're the minority of like whatever the scientific consensus is, it is absolutely reasonable for people to call you out on that.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
So let me tell you how, in my opinion, this issue can be made very simple. First, credibility is a matter of reputation, which is kind of like a track record, which is, if we had to categorize it, it's going to be a probabilistic or an inductive thing. So if we say that someone's credibility or authority means that what they say in their field is likely the case, there's no fallacy. But as soon as we add any kind of binary certainty, then we're starting to cross over into deduction. Then it becomes a fallacy of appealing to authority, in my opinion.
Oh, I don't know anybody who should disagree with that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's what you buttress your arguments by saying, look, this is my argument. There are academics out there who are experts who agree with this, leaning support to it, that you're not some wild crackpot, right?
And here's why.
Here's
right?
why.
It's,
here's the reasons why. Right.
It's the and here's why. If you're missing that and here's why, you're immediately starting to fall into fallacious argumentation. Immediately, no matter what the subject is.
Oh, there's one exception. There's one exception real quick, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
Some of these topics are very, very complicated. And so, for example, I know nothing about, let's say, like neurology. Not a goddamn thing. Nothing. I couldn't be a venture guess. I don't know a nerve from an axiom from a dendrite. Don't give a shit. So if I say, look, I'm looking at your argument about neurology, I have no idea how to evaluate it. This expert who is a neurologist says this. I'm going to say it's probably more likely the case based upon the expert's opinion. That's not fallacious. Even though
but
I'm not
I don't think that's
I
don't think that's argumentation. I don't think you're really adding anything to the discussion then, unless you're asking about that person's situation. In which case, you're not arguing. You're saying, hey, you're saying this, and this expert is saying this, and that's saying a different thing. Can you square that for me? You're not making an argument in that case. You're asking for more of an elaboration. So I would probably exclude your example from what I would say is fallacious argumentation, at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, you're asking the person, hey, you're arguing this other expert's arguing this. How do you square those two? Sure.
Right. Yeah.
One thing I want to point out, Steve, is you said, yeah, I don't think anyone would disagree with that about the okay in induction, not okay in deduction. And I agree. Most people, if you lay it out and they know the basics of logic, they're going to agree. But the thing about fallacies that I think it's important for us to know is people aren't always completely conscious when they're making them. It's often like a reflex.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And so this is why it's worth noting, and this is why one thing I've tried to practice and master is, in a debate, I try to keep a cool head as much as possible. I try to let bullets just bounce off me, because the minute I react, the minute I start reacting, then this is how you end up in that part of a debate where you suddenly don't remember what the topic was about and you're confused. We've all been there, right? It's like you don't even know where
Have
you are
been
anymore.
in a debate though?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
got you. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it's hard. It's hard not to get lost sometimes. Sure.
Well, what I'm saying is, if you a billion objections come up in your mind that you want to object to, but if you choose only the ones that you think are relevant and don't simply react, you won't find yourself in that state of confusion. And to me, it's paramount to not find yourself in that state of confusion. And of course, if the opposition does find themselves in that, then they don't even know what's going on, and they're at an incredible disadvantage. And so I actually think dumpster fires are they're intellectual junk food. They are not what people think they are. They shouldn't even be considered entertaining, in my opinion.
I find them entertaining though. But you're right; they're intellectual junk food. That's good. I'm gonna steal that because that's kind of what they are. They're like, okay, I know this is not good for me, but I can't help it. I got to have the sugar rush.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
When you have somebody who doesn't really understand the distinction between inductive and deductive, then you're going to have obviously problems, right? So if I mean, for example, an inductive argument cannot be valid by definition of what a invalid argument is, and that's an appropriate time to use by definition, because it is prescriptively the case that in induction cannot be 100% valid. It has to be. It can be cogent, which means it's more than 50% probability, but it has to be less than 100%. It cannot be deductively valid because then it's no longer induction. And so when you're saying, when somebody makes the argument that, okay, I'm changing this inductive argument into a deductive argument, there might be huge problems with that, because they're saying it is the case rather than it is more likely the case, unless you understand that even in an inductive argument, you don't state things probabilistically. I can say, and it's perfectly fine to say, there are almost almost all the marbles in a jar are blue. X is a marble in the jar. X is blue. As a perfectly cogent argument, but it's an inductive argument. You don't have to say X is probably blue. You can actually state it as X is blue as an inductive argument. But we are understanding that these are probabilistic arguments. You cannot say X is certainly blue, because then you have a deductive argument. Now you're saying that the conclusion must follow from the premises, which does not happen. That is a non sequitur. Would you agree?
I would agree with this, because when you say X is a blue marble as your conclusion, we're sort of banking on the ambiguity of natural language, in that it doesn't by default bring in the hard truth value of deduction.
Correct.
And
it doesn't guarantee the conclusion is going to be true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that would be the problem if it did. So yeah, because that is our decision. Our decision with the probabilistic argument is that we are moving forward as if we will select a blue marble, But then it's also the case that we're not surprised if we pull out one of the others, because we knew what the situation is. But anyway, yeah. So let's see, what was that about? Yeah. So yeah. So. Yeah, I agree with that.
I think we're all in agreement there.
I mean, if you're talking about things that are fallacious, and whether or not you're trying to avoid the fallaciousness of a situation, or you're trying to avoid in a debate somebody, I would almost say, weaponizing their degree to try to claim some authority, particularly about a topic that may or may not they may or may not have expertise in, because I think there's a difference between a biologist talking about evolutionary biology of humanity and a zoologist. A zoologist might be an expert about the care or the anatomy or the biology of a monkey, but that certainly does not necessarily make them an expert in biology and evolutionary biology in particular. And I think back to one of the questions about why have this discussion in the first place, because I see that going on a little bit in the chat about why are we even having these discussions about philosophy, is that when you're talking about this question about biology and whether or not evolution is true and yada 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 yada, and you have people dishonestly using their degrees to push garbage, the same thing applies to philosophy. If you've got somebody who's got a degree in biology who's saying this is what philosophy is, and they're not agreeing with the consensus of philosophy, you've got the exact same kind of fallaciousness going on. So like it spreads topics, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, look, been around a very long time. I don't know a lot of people that have PhDs that sit there and go, "Yes, Steve is absolutely wrong about this."
I have seen people circle jerk philosophy before, and oh my god, is it some of the most pedantic nonsense I have ever seen.
I was about to give you an example of that. For example, like I said,
Yeah.
there are not a lot of PhDs out there that go, "Yeah, Steve's fundamentally screwed" on all this stuff. I just don't know any. Now, obviously, you're going to have younger creationists out there that go, "Oh yeah, Steve's wrong about the age of the Earth." Okay, yeah, well, they're younger creationists, right? But I don't know anyone that says, "Yeah, Steve's wrong about the age of the Earth," but his understanding of basic phylogeny is screwed. I don't have that, right? So there is a guy out there. I'm sure you guys are familiar with him, Dr. Richard Carrier, who has written twice about me on blogs. I get along with the guy. I consider him probably, an acquaintance. I mean, one time more maybe of a friend, because we used to talk about a lot. Now we haven't talked to in ages. But when he wrote his blogs about me, he misrepresented so much about what I believed. I mean, so much. And so there was a case where he was using his PhD to push forth this really obscure viewpoints that he was having that really had nothing to do with my arguments. He did so with a position of authority because he has a PhD and I don't. Even though we had a long debate on Facebook going back and forth. There's just two of us going back and forth. There was kind of a moderated discussion. But he was so just very difficult in his wanting to understand my position and him changing it and making an air of authority because he has a PhD. And I found it to be a little distasteful, but he also does that with so many other people that he's arguing against, with even Bart Ehrman. And I'm not trying to equate myself with Bart Ehrman, okay? But I mean, saying that anybody who's an opponent, he seems to have done that to. And I see that a lot with philosophy. Certain people that get into philosophy, they use it as a bludgeon to say, well, I have a PhD in this, and this. But that doesn't mean that they're going to treat the argumentation honestly. I'm not trying to say Rich Carrier's dishonest, but if you listen to him talk about mythicism in certain cases, it could get pretty sketchy pretty quickly when you talk to somebody who is an expert in history that disagrees with him.
Yeah. So my thoughts on this topic of, since we're still on kind of appealing to authority and things like that, I think it comes back to a general problem in philosophy, which may be bigger than philosophy, and it's objectification and vanity. I'll give you an example. If I let's say someone just makes a run-of-the-mill ad hominem fallacy, my options, I have two options in my view. It's to say explicitly that they made an ad hominem, as if the idea of an ad hominem has some intrinsic authority that I can use to damn them, or I could get rid of the title of ad hominem and I could frame it in the form of a question that demonstrates its meaning. I could say, what does me being a complete dumbass have to do with whether my argument is sound or not?
That's how you would do it, right? If I say, hey, Gasper's wrong because he's a dumbass, that's completely gracious. That's my textbook ad hominem.
Is that like argumentum ad dumbassium or something?
Yes, argumentum ad dumbass. Yes.
But the point is, if all I do is I say that's an ad hominem, it still may not be apparent to everyone what's wrong with that. If I frame it in the question, if I frame it as a question and I remove the title and I say, what does me being a dumbass do to affect the soundness of my argument? Now the ball's in their court and they have a burden of proof that is impossible to meet.
Well, it's worse than
They
that. I've had a lot of people say, look, if I said, hey, look, Gasper is wrong, and I give very specific reasons why he's wrong, and I'll be also he has absolutely no experience in this particular topic. He's never read anything about it. He's self-admitted. He's never read a paper on it. He's never gone to school for it. That's not ad hominem, right? Because I've given
That's
reasons why. If I say, look, he's wrong, and here's the reasons, because he got some fundamental mistakes, and here's the mistakes he's made, and he's incompetent, that's not ad hom. And I'm so sick of people telling me that's ad hom, but it's not when we're talking about fallacies. Now, there are reasons to say ad hom towards the man, and I get that, but it's understood that an ad hominem fallacy or an ad hominem attack when it comes to informal logical fallacies is a very specific format where you're saying this person is wrong because of something about the person.
Yeah. Well, we've seen the little table on the internet, right? A table that shows all the scenarios. You're wrong because you're a dumbass. That's a fallacy. You are wrong and you are a dumbass is not a fallacy.
It's ambiguous, right? It's not. I mean, it's rhetoric, because if I just say if I leave off the insult, if I just say you're wrong. Okay. Why?
It's the difference. It's the difference between because and the word and.
Yeah, there's a distinction made, because the reason why you're saying somebody's wrong is something intrinsic about that person, something to them. That's the fallacy.
And you might just be like wasting somebody's time if you decide to say you're wrong, and the argument of nuh-uh is not really worthwhile. However, I can see that if a conversation has gone on for a while and you've explained already multiple times how this person is wrong, and you're just like, yeah, you're just wrong. I already said why, and then you just move on with your day. And now I think you're an idiot.
Well, there might be a point in a discussion we could just say, look, you're just a dumbass and you're just wrong, and that's all I'm going to say about it. I get that, I really do. But that's actually further down the line, and you're not really saying they're wrong because they're a dumbass, but you're just like, look, you're just a dumbass who don't know what the hell you're talking about. I get that.
Yeah. So. I just want to tie this back into one of the points. Is that people get too obsessed with titles in philosophy, and often to the point of neglecting whatever the guts under the titles would be. And so that's why I just used this example of ad hominem. We could use any of the fallacies. Instead of just invoking the title, don't bring up the title and show only the guts, and the meaning of it will be made apparent. The same thing. Let's say someone believed in Hitchens razor. Whether or not you do. Instead of just invoking Hitchens razor, leave the title out, use the guts, and just say, do you have evidence for that? And they're like, no, I don't need it. It's like, okay, then is it okay if I don't give you evidence to reject it?
I agree.
Yeah. And so to me, even if someone had competence, a degree, if they were a genius, it's bad form for them to use that title, just demonstrate the guts of the matter.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them use it facetiously. They just throw it out there like they think it's some kind of defeater. But how many times I've asked for people for citations, and I swear I would say upwards of 99% of the time when I ask for a citation, I never get one. Nothing. And it's just bizarre, because here's the people out there going, okay, Steve, give me your argument. What's your reasoning for it? What's your citations? And I give them all, and they say, well, that's wrong. And you're like, well, why is that wrong? And they just say it's wrong by fiat. I'm like, wait a minute, you're making an assertion that it's wrong. You're saying it's actually this, contrary to what I'm telling you, contrary to actual peer-reviewed papers that I'm giving you, actual logic that I've actually proven. I mean, literally some of the stuff I have proven using logic, and you're saying that is wrong. It's going to take a little bit more for me to change my position than you just merely saying that I'm wrong or my logic's wrong without a demonstration or a citation. Do you have either a demonstration or a citation? I prefer both. I'm telling you right here now, I have not to date got a single citation or demonstration of some of my logical arguments being wrong. Not a single solitary one. Why is that? And especially, and one of my proofs I put through a logic checker, literally show that the valid, the object, it was like, tells you your proof is correct because it's valid. And I've had people tell me, well, that's not valid. Well, why is it not valid? I mean, you got a natural logic, or excuse me, a logic checker here that's saying that it's valid. I can give you the rules of inference that I used. Why is it not valid? And the only reason they say it's not valid is because they don't like the conclusion. And so that's not an argument.
Yeah.
Especially when they say it's invalid, you need to tell me why it's invalid. I mean, there's a lot more to it than just saying, oh, well, I disagree with the conclusion. Okay. That doesn't mean it's invalid, but the conclusion follows from the rules of inferences. No, it doesn't. Okay. Well, why not? And I swear it's like talking to a 4-year-old with some of these people.
Yeah, well, there's like a lot of Dunning-Kruger in the philosophy spheres regarding the topic of logic in particular. You could give a perfectly valid basic modus ponens argument, and then some chump is going to be, it's like modus ponens, like P of Q, P, and then some chump will be like, premise 2 doesn't follow. It's like,
oh no, worse than that.
I don't even know where to start.
Worse than that, dude. I swear to you, this. Oh my God, this kills me. This is how I even wrote something on how to attack an argument. And one of the things I put in there is don't ever say that you have not proven your premise. It just fundamentally misunderstands what the hell a modus ponens even is. Okay. So there's one, don't say that you haven't proven your premise, therefore I reject it. Now you're just being an idiot because that's not at all how it works. And worse, dude, do you know how many people I've run into that claim they understand basic logic? And again, I'm not a logician, right? Basic logic is what I do. Very, very, very basic, first year kind of stuff. I've never claimed to know more than basic Boolean logic, even though I am writing a paper that I'm trying to get published in an actual philosophical journal that has used Boolean logic and actual logical schema based on Dr. Demi's work. I had 5 PhDs review. One of them was a PhD from England. I know who he is. I didn't recognize his name at the time, but I found out he was the person who reviewed my paper. He's an expert in Daltheism. And he said that he found no substantive errors, and he actually said good job to the author. Now, again, when they're doing these pre-peer reviews, they have no idea who the hell the author is. They don't know me from a hill of beans, right? It's just Dr. S.A. Malik, who's a friend of mine, asked 5 of his colleagues to review my paper because, he knows a little bit about it, but he doesn't know a lot about logic enough to really say one way or another if my logical argumentation was correct. But 5 PhDs found no substantive logical errors with it, which to me is pretty impressive. I'm not saying that it's right because of that, but I think it's something to be noted, right? But when you have when I give something a modus ponens, like one of my favorite one is if 1 and 1 does not equal 3, then 2 and 2 does not equal 5. It is not the case that 2 and 2 does not equal 5. Therefore, it's not the case that 1 and 1 equals 3. It's basically a modus tollens, but the conditional is true. The premise 1 is true because it's called a vacuous truth. If both P and Q on a conditional implication are false, that conditional is true. So if I say 1 plus 1 equals 3, then 2 plus 2 equals 5, that premise is true because both the atomic propositions Q and Q are false. And the only time that a conditional implication is false is if Q is true, Q is false and P is true. So if the consequent is false and the antecedent is true, that's the only time in a truth table that propositional relationship, that conditional implication is false. And I have people tell me, well, that may be valid, but it's not sound. I'm like, well, why isn't it sound? Premise 1 is false. Why is premise 1 false? Because P and Q are both false. I'm like, yes, that makes it true. And I tell you right here and now, it drives me freaking crazy when I even show them the truth table, dude. I even show them the truth table. I can show them a natural checker, logic checker, but they still don't understand that conditional implication. And they're telling me that I don't know basic logic. I'm like, look, you can argue I don't know basic logic, but if you do that, I would expect you probably would know a little bit more about basic logic than I do, in that you can show a conditional implication being false when both the P and Q are false. Give me the citation for that. Give me the evidence for that. Right? I mean,
sure. There's a quick question in the chat from Mr. Smith. Why do people think appealing to valid authorities is wrong? I'm actually curious to tell your thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, because they've been indoctrinated. They've been indoctrinated. They think that appealing to an authority is somehow fallacious when it's not. There's something called legit argumentium ad verecundium, which is basically you're appealing to an authority to buttress your argument. As Gasper pointed out, if I say, look, this expert says it's true, therefore it is true, that's fallacious. Or if I say this expert says it's true, and this person is not an expert under the domain of discourse we're talking about, therefore it's more likely correct, that's fallacious.
It's not. I don't think it's usually that. I think it's usually laziness. It's people who want to believe what they already believe, and they're too lazy to learn about anything else. They just want the other person to be wrong. So they appeal
Right.
to basically fallacious fallacies. They don't want to deal with the argument. They don't understand it well enough and aren't willing to apply that across the board, because almost every single one I've seen, I guarantee you that if you go and look at something they agree with, they have absolutely zero problem with looking at what the general consensus of whatever it is they're talking about is saying.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Because I mean, like I said, I did a proof showing that weak atheism is logically the same as weak theism. I've done numerous proofs in this, but the last proof I did, I actually put in a proof checker to show that it was valid. I mean,
Cheshire. Hey, Cheshire. You there?
sure.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I agree. I really don't like it when people appeal to fallacious fallacies. It grinds my gears.
Or worse, they say, "Oh, your conclusion's false because you have a fallacy." Well, that's called a fallacy fallacy.
No,
You know?
no. I'm giving her a hard time about
I
the
know.
fallacious fallacy thing.
You just think because you just think fallacious sounds like fellatio. That's why.
Oh, well, I wasn't gonna go there. It's just
Yeah, I
no.
can.
And on another subject, Illmatic would like to know, Steve, if you're into gaming at all.
Yeah, I mean, on the GDC channel, I play some games. I mean, right now I've got to finish what's called Fallout New Vegas. I'm about 90% done with that. I used to play World of Warcraft for like 10 years. I got to be pretty good at a PvP mage. I was a fire mage back when fire wasn't cool. Everybody's like, go Frost. I'm like, no, man, I'm a fire mage, man. I'm serious. I was the last fire mage, I think, on my server, but I was like the third highest kills on my entire server.
That's because people didn't know how to play fire mages. They didn't understand that you needed to play them as if they were a shotgun.
The way I learned how to make ignite and
as somebody who doesn't play WoW, by the way.
I learned how to maximize, as you should play a fire mage. But fire mage is a lot more difficult than an ice mage was. But yeah, no, I play my games occasionally. I just haven't had time to in the last, I don't know. I moved a couple of weeks ago and I haven't played a game since.
You're gonna be playing Elden Ring. It's coming out. Oh, okay, never mind. It's sort of, the Dark Souls community is hyped up about it. It's a From Software game. It's coming out really soon, like sometime really soon. And I'm gonna be playing it because I'm real big in the Dark Souls community. So
Dark Souls is one of those games that takes a very long time to get into. From what I understand.
Depends on what you're looking for in a game.
Not one that takes a long time to get into.
It's no
League of Legends.
It's designed so that you can't button mash your way through it. It doesn't matter if you're high level or not, you will get killed if you try to button mash. So you have to be vigilant and tactful with how you move. And that's one of the coolest things about it. The other thing is the storyline is kind of metaphorical, and all of the characters basically speak in like poetic language, so nobody really knows exactly what Dark Souls is about. There's entire forums dedicated to speculating,
websites. I think people had a better grasp of Bloodborne than I think they did of what's going on with Dark Souls from my watching and following about like what the plot is, because the plot of Dark Souls is very buried.
It's pretty tripped out.
I happen to like flight simulators.
Elden Ring, by the way, is February 25th of this year.
Okay, cool.
I never buy anything for myself, but if I ever splurge, I'd like to get an actual throttle flight sims.
Oh yeah,
but way off in the future.
Yeah, Elden Ring and Dark Souls are, if you like playing your games a little bit more methodically, than compared to like, I don't know, Call of Duty, I guess would be fair. You're not gonna like run through hack and slash. It's a step by step. I've learned how to dodge properly. Now I've learned when to parry, and now I've learned what my equipment does and how to utilize that equipment, and then the paths and how which enemies attack in what way. So it kind of gives you a little bit more branching options and how to approach situations, but you're not just gonna like run through it. I think Steve would like it. I just think it'd be a decent amount of like play time for him, because it's not like it's a game that you have to run through.
I'm still, dude. I started Fallout New Vegas. Oh my god, what? I don't know, 8 months ago. I mean, I play very infrequently, and when I do, I only play for a couple hours at a time. So, I mean, this is like the longest I've sat for quite some time, except for the other day. Cheshire and I sat. I mean, I had a show, then we did an after show, and it was like 6 hours. I can't sit for 6 hours anymore.
I think that he would probably do better on Bloodborne just because there's a dodge option.
Wait, so
I hate
Cheshire, Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 1, and I believe Dark Souls 2, they all have they have the roll, which is basically a dodge.
Yep.
Bloodborne 3 is the hardest out of the Soulsborne games. People tend to agree. It's hard as fuck. You have no shield. You only have your gun, your shotgun, basically, in place of a shield.
Yeah.
Is Dark Souls kind of like Neverwinter Nights? Because I've played that before.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's not an MMO. It doesn't have like the big open world theme. It's more like a dungeon crawl.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, it's a play style similar.
It's Neverwinter top down.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Let me double check, because I think I'm
It's
thinking of
isometric. It's isometric 3D.
Anyways,
Ben, what else you got for us? I mean, we went from philosophy to games.
I would say no. I would say it's not like Neverwinter. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to wrap this subject up, Helmatic wants to know if you played Red Dead.
Oh, he'd like Red Dead.
It looks like a good game. I mean, I probably would if I had it. Because again, what is it? New Vegas. It's similar in that kind of motif. Although I tend to like more of the I happen to love playing Destiny 2. Love that game. But the problem was I just don't have the time to grind, and I don't have time to invest in it that it required. And after each season, they made it so difficult to be a casual player. And I haven't played it in ages, and I probably would not be able to get back into it. But I really like
somebody that you could play with that you'd probably be fine.
I don't know. I like doing what's called the gambits. I really just enjoyed very casual gambit playing.
I know a few people.
And I got pretty decent at it. But again, it's very contingent upon certain weapons and understanding what weapons you have to combine with each other to kill people. And so I got pretty decent at it. But those are the kind of games that I like. Anyways, well, we're going to wrap this up with Jen.
Boy got ideas, wondering what you think about Hyperionism.
I have absolutely no idea what the hell that is.
No problem. So are you looking to wrap up the stream now? Because I see we have Detroiter who might want to ask some questions, but if you're done for now, we can wrap it up.
Wait, do we have to Hyperion? Do we have to morgue pill Steve McRae?
I don't know.
Part 2.
Oh my god. Hey, you know what? It's good you don't know who Morg is.
Morg? Is it a game or a YouTuber?
It's a YouTuber. He looks like Marilyn Manson with plucked eyebrows, and he talks about new age stuff.
Is it D Morg or something? Was that the guy? Wait, is that the guy from like that show Hyperion? I think I have seen him. Like white skin.
Yep.
I have seen him. I don't listen to him, but okay.
And he has this new age philosophy that's all wrapped up in like math, but he sort of mysticizes math a little bit, and he's cocksure and full of hubris, and that's probably why he is in the position he's in.
I've seen him, but I'm not familiar with enough. I've never watched any of his stuff besides clips that people put on Twitter. So
Real quick. Oh, hey, Detroiter, did you have something you wanted to say?
You're muted, dude. Or dudette.
Detroit, what's up?
Somebody might have invited me up here. No, not really.
Okay. Do you have any philosophy you want to ask or talk about? Like,
I don't know. Not really. I don't really know much of Steve's views.
Okay, no problem. We will go to the after show. Thank you so much for being with us here this evening, Steve.
Yeah,
Do you have any
Now-
closing words, or I'll throw your YouTube channel in the description for my video on my channel, Church of Entropy.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Gasper.
Oh no, all I was gonna say was it's time for the after show dumpster fire.
I'm gonna be probably passed out. I started watching a show called something. What was it? 81 on Netflix. What is that called? Archive 81. Really good so far. I'm only in the second episode. No spoilers. So I'm probably going to watch that. So I'll have to skip the after show. But anyways, Jen and Ramona, thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled that anybody even wants to listen to me on their channel. So I'm really humbled when people say, "Hey, you want to come and talk about some of this stuff?" A lot of these topics we talked about are just, I guess, they're not easy just to jump into, and I understand that it takes a lot of time to go read about certain things, at least get a basic understanding, which is anything, it's basically what I do anyways. It's basic stuff that I think that I do. But as far as the stuff that I really do talk about a lot, the science and the philosophy and the topics that I do have an interest in, like epistemology and atheism and basic mathematics, I think it's important that people get into those topics because they are the groundwork for logic and reason and understanding. And when we have communities out there that talk about critical thinking and they do the exact opposite, they say they're skeptics and they do the exact opposite, they are just as foundationally misled as any creationists I've ever seen.
They get just as mad too.
Yeah, they get irate. They don't do citations. They ask other people for evidence. They're like, "Oh, you're a theist. Where's your evidence for God?" Which I'm by not a theist, but in general, they ask a theist for evidence of God. When you turn around and say, "Where's your evidence?" they block you. And it's a very disingenuous approach to having an honest dialogue. And there's a lot of disingenuous, dishonest people out there. I've had to block many of them over the years. They're always going to be out there. They're always going to be coming around when Cheshire and I are around. They exist. They're shitty people. I have nothing to do with any of them. It should be noted that all these people, all they do is want to talk about the person rather than talk about the arguments. I will dare anybody to say that a logical argument that has been proven through a valid logic checker is invalid and show me the evidence for that. I don't know anybody that would make such an argument. They have the evidence for that because they don't. But they'll make those arguments that I'm wrong. And I think that's what we need to be careful.
They don't make arguments that you're wrong. They make statements that you're wrong.
Yeah, it's not even arguments. It's just by fiat. Yeah. So I just want to put it out there to people. Look, if you want to call yourself a critical thinker, do you want to call yourself a skeptic in the colloquial sense, not dealing with knowledge, go read about these things. If you're an atheist and you have no understanding of atheism, then what's the point of going out in these atheist communities and being proud of being an atheist? I'm not saying you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, what's the point? If you say that atheism is, oh, I just don't believe the theist, I just lack a belief. Okay, great. You've added nothing to the conversation. Why do I need to spend 2 hours talking to you about philosophy if you add nothing of value to talk to me about, if that's your only understanding of atheism? And I really think that atheists have a lot to offer theists. I think the theists have a lot to offer to atheists. And I think that if both of them move past, these hyperbolic interrelationships between each other and these fallacious interactions and start, being actual critical thinkers, you'll have a lot better dialogues. And that's what Chester and I do on the NonSequitur show. So I want to invite people over to listen to us. And if Jen puts the link to the NonSequitur show and my channel and her channel, Chester's channel in the description, we'd be greatly appreciative. But I'm going to end it there. So thank you for inviting me.
Hey, Steve, I appreciate you, man. Like I was telling everybody, this is why I have this server. I created this server because I consider myself to be like small brain guy. So I created this server a little bit out of selfishness because I wanted to surround myself by a bunch of very, well-informed intellectual people. I have a lot of them that popped in today. Quantum's one of them. Gaspar is definitely one of them. Like, just people, exchanging ideas in a healthy environment. Of course, we get some trolls every now and then, and it's really fun to troll the trolls. But that's what I want the server to be. I'm a philosophy major, so I'm hoping to get my PhD, way down the road. But until then, I have this, and I appreciate you. And the way I view it is like you helped me, so I definitely appreciate that.
I'd be happy to pop by the server so often if people have a discussion on it. Like I said, I do have 2 servers, the Great Debate Community and the NonSequitur show server is being started, and I'll link that in the promote me thing or the one channel you have for that. But as far as like you being a philosophy major, mean, do you think that I really have said anything that really is incongruent with standard practices as far as philosophy? I'm just kind of curious.
I haven't particularly heard anything. I'll be honest with you. So like my philosophy classes that I've taken so far, because I'm currently in community college. I start university this next semester. They cover basically like intro philosophy, like introduction to logic, introduction to epistemology. Basically like the the bare basics, basically. So like I wouldn't say that I have the best representation of like what they talk about in the field, just because I hear the very, very entry level philosophical arguments, like trolley argument, like, but yeah. So I haven't heard particularly anything that I thought that I haven't heard before, or not like it's unoriginal or anything, but like anything that I thought was out of line, I guess.
I appreciate it. I was just kind of curious. All right, wrap it up. I'm going to go I'm going to bow out and go watch my show. But again, I really do appreciate you guys having me and Cheshire on. And I really do hope people like the next episode on the Non-Sequitur Show, which is going to be, I'm just going to steal the phrase, it's going to be philosophy junk food. I think that Casper said.
Is it?
It really. I mean, we got Dr. Jim Majors, who's a really great guy, a friend of mine. And then we have Dr. S.J. Thomason, and everybody who's any kind of engaged with S.J. would know it's bound to be an interesting. And then Craig Reed, I really like some of his takes on things. So it's two theists versus an atheist. And I'm talking about
bring your drinks, bring your popcorn. It's gonna be bring your marshmallows.
And we're talking about proper atheists. I'm just saying. Jim Majors, he's an atheist that believes there are no gods. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be Cheshire and I kind of guiding it and just kind of throwing kerosene in. All right, guys. We'll see you later.
Hey,
bye-bye.
Take care,
Bye.
brother.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye, Cheshire.
Are you sticking around, Josh?
I don't know what's going on. I'm curious.
No, all right. We're having an after show, so I'll go ahead and change the title over.
Yeah, goodbye.
I'm just being nosy. I probably will take off soon, but I'm just a little bit curious to see what you guys are hanging out about.
Yeah, so what's cracking? Quantum, get on stage, you coward.
Come on, Sully.
Yeah, get up here, you
expectation
pathetic coward.
That may or may not involve certain dumpster fires, certain inopportune moments may be happening right now. Hey, Quantum.
Hey, Quantum. What's cracking?
The mom.
My mom? Do you wanna link to my mom's OnlyFans?
Yeah, dude, you keep talking about it, so
I keep hyping it up because that's where it's at.
There was a question in the chat about what people thought about crypto, if they wanted to answer that, like if they want to warm up for the possible inevitable dumpster fire.
I mean, the new crypto shit, like NFTs and all that, or what are we talking about?
I don't know. It sounded really open-ended, so like take it wherever you want, honestly.
I mean, I guess crypto could apply to like a lot. Like NFTs are crypto in a way that they're not a direct currency, but they kind of function in the same kind of digital space.
I think they're like a pyramid scheme.
Kind of, yeah.
Basically, like something will have value if I can like sell it to 3 more people, and then those 3 more people sell it to 3 more people, and then.
I mean, that is kind of how money works. It's like it's the same as like a Pokemon card. Things have as much value as people decide that they have as a group, right? So, like, is a Pokemon card really worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? I mean, what are you going to use it for?
If it's like really shiny.
So,
right?
So when I pull out a $20 bill from now on, I need to say, Andrew Jackson, I choose you.
Yes, correct. Every time. You have to yell too. It can't be quiet. Make sure you're wearing a baseball cap or have one handy so you can spin
and
it
have
around.
a little backpack. Yeah, have a little backpack and a baseball cap.
Yeah, the 999 times out of 1,000 that joke doesn't land is worth the one time it does.
Ooh.
Nah, you should try to just pay in Pokemon cards. Just whip out like the biggest stack and be like, look, together these are worth like at least $19.
You could do that. You just wouldn't be able to do it at like a store. So you could do that at like a trade or a convention or like a shop that specifies in cards.
They don't want to take my money. My money's no good here.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Cheshire,
legal tenure.
So you talked about Dark Souls. How much Dark Souls have you played?
So I didn't play a whole lot of Dark Souls. I did watch a lot of it, and I've like watched a lot of the theories around it. Same with Bloodborne. I got to play a little bit more Bloodborne than I did Dark Souls though.
Oh yeah, Bloodborne is tripped out.
Yo, the spiders though, the spider boys that are invisible at first, and then you change the moon.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so they're not spiders. They're called amygdalas, like the part of the brain, and so one of the cool things about Dark Souls is, like most RPGs, you have these different stats like health and all the rest. In Dark Souls, there's a stat called insight, and as your insight increases, certain things about the environment change, certain enemies become more nightmarish.
You notice things better.
Yeah, and then when your insight is high enough, then you start seeing the amygdalas.
I thought it had to do with the moon change. Was it insight though?
In different contexts, yes, there's a certain point where the moon changes, and then amygdalas are climbing around on the cathedrals.
Yes, that's what I was talking about.
But so it, as most of us know, Bloodborne is inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, and so so there's this kind of theme of like, oh, you're gaining this kind of arcane occult enlightenment, but that's also sort of taking a step towards madness or insanity. That's kind of a Lovecraft.
So like you're seeing things that weren't there before. Are they real? Or are they not? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a pretty cool game. I like it. There's this point where you jump off a balcony into a lake where there's a reflection of the moon on the lake, and then all of a sudden you're in like this just white kind of ether where you fight this weird spider, and
all the little spider baboos.
Yeah, it's just totally badass,
It's kind of got like an element of like Fae lore almost to it, with jumping into a reflection of the moon like that is very Fae.
What is Fae? What
like fairies?
Yeah, like Celtic fairies. Yeah.
Yes.
So I had a book. Well, I still have it. I have a book of Celtic fairy tales that I used to read to my daughter. And it's interesting to see how fairies were actually talked about in these, because they're not necessarily these nice little healing pixies from Zelda.
Oh yeah, they're terrifying.
yeah. They will like kidnap your children. They will swap them out with changelings and take them off to this land where they forget where they came from. It's really interesting and kind of eerie. I like the weird. Sorry, what? Huh?
I love those Celtic fairy tales. I had a book like that too at one point.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. There's a lot of themes of kids getting swapped out with changelings. That's one of the coolest, most interesting things about it.
And fun things about the Fae is that there's the Seelie and the Unseelie court. And so depending on what type of Fae you're talking about and which court they may belong to will be a little bit indicative more of their behavior, but Fae tend to have an overarching theme of they're just lighthearted and playing pranks, but they're immortal and humans aren't. So their pranks tend to be deadly for people and they think it's funny.
Huh. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Seelie tends to be like the little bit more friendlier Fae folk, and the Unseelie tend to be the creepier and the bizarre. So like the the Seelie would be like, oh, I've made this meadow become flowers, and the Unseelie would be like, oh, the meadow has now rotted and there are bugs everywhere. And they're both very natural. They're both very, like, different parts of the way nature cycles, and that's kind of the difference between the courts.
I read this one that was about a leprechaun that teaches a guy how to make beer out of barley.
Yeah, that sounds right. Sounds like a leprechaun.
Nice.
He basically tricks him because he's like, no, I want your pot of gold. And he's like, no, I'm going to teach you this amazing beer recipe.
I mean, that's basically equivalent to gold, especially like location. You start a bar with a whole new beer that nobody's ever had, and it's an amazing leprechaun recipe, and it's actually good beer. You're gonna make more than whatever was in that pot of gold.
Yeah, I think he like tricks him, and he like doesn't actually tell him how to make the beer or something.
That sounds about right.
Yep, there's always some rotten deal. And I don't know if has anyone here read the Berserk mangas?
I haven't read all of them, but I know it.
Yeah.
Nirvana's a big weeb, so he's probably read all of it.
Oh, he's a Super Saiyan 5 level weeb with the long golden hair because he speaks Japanese. That's how much of a weeb he is.
Advanced.
He's like, it's like arigato, and probably
Side note though, Super Saiyan 5 is not the one with the long hair. Super Saiyan 3 is the one with the long hair. Super Saiyan 5 is the golden magic monkey boy.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
I graduated from the Dragon Ball franchise in my teens, so
I'm sad because I don't even actually like Dragon Ball.
Oh,
Z specifically.
So that means you just went down a completely useless rabbit hole one day.
I watched Dragon Ball Z. I actually enjoyed Dragon Ball. It was very weird. But Dragon Ball Z I watched like pretty much everybody else did while it was on TV, and then I was disenfranchised with the series quite a few times, and I'm not the biggest fan of Super. I understand why people like it, and I don't begrudge people for it. It's just not for me. The storytelling is okay. The characterization is annoying for the most part. Goku sucks. Don't get me started. I'll go forever.
Well, Dragon Ball is acceptable. Dragon Ball Z is basically Power Rangers, though. Dragon Ball Z is incredibly dorky.
It is dorky, yeah.
It's just it just boils down to a bunch of dudes flexing and screaming. Ah!
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, very power fantasy, which is fine.
Yeah, it's cool. Like I said, it's cool. It's cool for little boys in middle school.
Dragon Ball Z is pro wrestling with lasers.
Basically, yeah.
I got somebody in the chat. Millennial
think
asked,
about the premise.
What about fairy aesthetic from Hellboy 2? The tooth fairies? Though yeah, that's Fae. That's very Fae. That is very unseelie court. But sorry, yeah, go ahead. The plot.
Oh yeah, if you just think about the premise of Dragon Ball Z, it's okay. A bunch of martial arts badasses have to train to save the world from aliens.
I mean, you can break it down even further. Alien comes to Earth, gets brain damage, makes friends, fights his brother, goes to space.
Yeah.
Not too, right? It's like the Avengers are just like a team of badasses who like attract a bunch of like crazy aliens and shit to come attack the Earth.
I mean, I like Vegeta. Vegeta's got a decent character arc. Eventually. It's really slow, though.
Never watched Dragon Ball.
Shouldn't have taken till Dragon Ball Super to get a decent arc for Vegeta.
I like Avatar: The Last Airbender quite a bit.
Well, that's the problem with the mediums. If it's based off of manga and they gotta like stretch it out, so like every episode is 20 minutes of like,
I'm not.
My sisters love that show. It's just like, how?
I don't know how much Dragon Ball suffered from. I know they did come out with Dragon Ball Kai that took out a lot of the filler. I know Naruto suffered heavily from getting ahead of the manga. Bleach suffered a little bit, but not as much because you could just kind of they kind of sectioned the arcs off that were not related to the manga pretty succinctly, so you didn't have to worry about them as much. So like you skip the bounce, skip the princess arc, whatever. I like how we're just talking about anime I don't even like.
Space Dandy is the best anime ever.
Yeah, so Space Dandy's the shit, dude.
All anime is trash. Kidding.
Boobies, boobies, boobies.
Dude, I mean, that show is like, by the time you get to the last couple episodes, it's just like, oh my god, this makes so much sense now. I love that show.
I think Trigun's kind of like that too, where it's got like a little bit of a weird episodic romp around and then like shit gets real.
Yeah, it's like Space Dandy's like this crazy shit where, you know, he dies and the next episode happens and you're just like, okay, I guess we're just forgetting about that. And then at the end, they're just like, yeah, he's like basically God. So he's like living all these different timelines at the same time and shit. It's crazy.
Oh god. Get some Kurt Vonnegut up in here. A little bit of Slaughterhouse 5.
I guess the show didn't do very well in Japan though. I think the dub was really what it was made for.
Could be. That happens sometimes. You'll get like a series that does really well in one space and not very well in the other space. So if you're lucky enough to get it licensed.
Yeah, the humor is very Americanized, I felt like, but
Athens in the chat knows me too well. Don't let Chesh get into fixing certain animes. Yeah, I'll go forever. And Dark Matter brought up Yu Yu Hakusho, Attack on Titan, and Hunter x Hunter. So one of the funny things about Attack on Titan is it's just a mech anime. It's just mech. It's just disguised as they're just fleshy mechs.
Yep, that's right. It's basically Gundam.
Pretty much,
or Evangelion. Like just with Evangelion, not everybody can operate any Eva. The Evas have, they conform to a specific person. It's nice that you made that connection. I've thought that before. I've thought it was basically Japanese mechs versus zombies. Is basically what Attack on Titan is.
Yeah, I would put it like
because the other Titans are basically zombies.
Yeah, the other Titans are basically like failed mechs. So like people have tried to mesh with mechs and failed, and so the mechs are just operating off of base systems. So they're not actually functioning like at a higher level like you see with Aaron.
I was buying a car one time, and the guy selling me the car was just explaining the entire plot and like workings of Pacific Rim to me for like an hour.
Oh god, what? Why?
It was really annoying. Well, I had to wait.
Aliens come out of hole, work together, go burr. There you go.
And he was like, "Oh man, and there's these things called fuck, what the hell's the name of it? They're like Jaegers." He's like, and then it takes like 2 people to like drive the fucking giant robot, man. I'm like, okay.
Sorry, that is fucking
Power Rangers.
awesome. No, that is fucking awesome. And I don't know about it taking that long to explain it, but that plot is pretty good.
I mean, it's kind of Power Rangers, but doesn't need 5
Power
people to run the
Rangers
Zord.
Also awesome. For the same reason, basically, it was 5 people powering the thing instead of 2. 2 is kind of more epic in a way, though. I don't think they quite nailed it.
Sentai. So one of the fun things about Sentai and Super Sentai is that it's supposed to be corny. Like it's corny and choppy on purpose. And one of the reasons why it's so corny, like even more so in America or in Western culture, is because Saban, which was the company that licensed these, didn't just dub it over. They kind of picked and chose and cut out different pieces of different Super Sentai and made their own, and had actors going over top of it. Which is why you have some scenes where it's like, oh, this Power Ranger is totally part of this series in the Western show, but you never see them on screen together in their outfits or with their mechs because they're actually from completely different Super Sentai, which is kind of hilarious.
That part left me up here talking about anime, which like I don't even know that much about. I wish Nirvana was on because he's a like I said, a giant weeb, and definitely know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely just recommend, like, if you want to learn about Power Rangers, watch Linkara. He did something called History of the Power Rangers. Very good.
Yeah, I watched the Little Power Rangers when I was. Are we talking about like actual the Power Rangers, or we're talking about something else?
Yeah, the Power Rangers. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Mr. Smith says it's a godforsaken hybrid of Voltron and Saved by the Bell, which is pretty funny.
Yeah,
Saved by the
wholesome.
Bell. Oh yeah.
If anybody in the audience wants to come up, also you can.
Vulcan Skull
I'm just
got
imagining
a great character.
Screech. I'm imagining
Yes.
Screech transforming into a Power Ranger right now and like tripping as he's transforming.
I am 100% on board with that.
How is that for good? Power Rangers, what a great show.
What do you guys think about this new Lord of the Rings show that they're gonna have?
I have no idea. I am looking forward to binging both The Witcher Season 1 and Witcher 2, though.
It's gonna be hard to top Game of Thrones.
Oh, da-da.
Oh my god, it's Vulcan Skull from Power Rangers.
Hello? Alright. I got that glitch again. Yeah, I think the AMA was good.
Oh yeah, me too.
I'm trying to play Elite Dangerous right now, but it's not going well.
We're still at 17 viewers total. So
we
got 14 upvotes on YouTube, so we're doing pretty good.
Nice.
Nice. So let's see, I'll try to throw a topic at Jen, and then Jen can take it for a long time. Okay. Explain the pump mushroom thing.
Good question. Next question.
It's just like I want it to be like. Here's my problem: is I don't get what you don't get, but it's just the gulf of I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't see the utility of it, and
I
guess maybe in time the utility will be more obvious.
Yeah, I don't get the mushroom.
Well, philosophically, let's think of it like how does math understand things with points on a line or on a plane or whatever, right? But the point is construct mathematics, right? Could anything other than a point be a point or serve the purpose of a point?
Yeah, like I guess so. Like you could say that, like in like gauge theory and stuff like that. It's like there's going to be different ways to construe like what a point can include, I guess, and stuff like that. Like in string theory, like those strings are almost considered like point-like in a way, but then they have further properties, so that it's more useful, I guess you might say. Like, but they're like considered like one-dimensional, but they're looped. They're kind of like points.
Looped points. And then
Well, they're like lines because like a line has one dimension, but
sort of a question of understanding what is even being said by these models at some point.
oh yeah, and I mean I don't know, I don't understand them that well. To be
Well,
able to,
I
like,
think we need to look at what people are looking at for clues.
Yeah.
Like the fact that the Big Bang is something people are obsessed with. That's a clue to something. what is it a clue to? What? And the other one is, why do people think math is more real than language? And that's not something that is really easy to put words to why.
It's one of those things where it's just like a conception and an expectation, right? We don't teach mathematics the same way we teach language. And we don't experience mathematics in the same way we experience language. And because we don't communicate via mathematics, we rely on like whatever language you're speaking to do so. The nuances of that language are easier understood by the speakers. Because most people aren't fluent in mathematics. If you were to shift that paradigm, and like so say instead of in elementary school, and instead of learning the alphabet and reading in the way we currently do as heavily and leaned so far heavily into language and leaned more into mathematics, you would see a huge shift in the way people communicate and the way people kind of process information.
Oh yeah, I got a crazy thought. Ready? All right. So if people had like brain chips and could communicate like directly to each other, and they didn't have to use symbols to represent ideas, and they
Imagine
could
you didn't need a brain chip.
well, just imagine that you can like directly like show somebody your thoughts, and you
Oh,
don't
God.
have to use like a representative object, like a word or like a symbol, like a sound or something like that, to exchange the information about your idea. You can just show them the idea. And then how does that affect language, right? Like that's
Well, you wouldn't be using language almost at all at that point because you wouldn't need to. You'd be communicating via gestures, eye movement, and then whatever information that you're sending that person that they can receive. It's one of those things where you start going back to the we're limited as human beings in a biological space. And so I might be able to empathize or I might be able to understand what you mean when you say I'm in pain, I have a headache. I can't feel your headache, so I don't 100% know what you mean. I can only know so much, and so we're just limited in that case. But because we have a system in place and we have enough information in place that in society we've kind of have a good take for maybe a better example, colors. I can point at the color red and we can all agree that that's the color red, but it might not be the most red. And the red that I'm pointing at, I'm not seeing the same red you're seeing. Right? They're all going to be slightly different, but we have like a base understanding of this color. You could over time with enough emphasis put on it do that with other sensations like pain, for example. You could say that, let's say you had equated a color to a pain, and you could gather enough information and have everybody using the same kind of language consistently enough that you would be able to say, I'm feeling pain of blue level. And everybody would know that, oh, that means somewhere between here and here, and the consensus would be about the same.
yeah. I mean, I've always found that interesting too, like whether or not people actually see the same color when they look at something.
I had a
Imagine in the
whole
future,
big
it's like,
ass.
hey, how's it going, man? Oh, pinkish. Oh, how about you? Oh,
Oh, for
greenish. You
sure.
know,
Yo,
pretty
absolutely.
green, a little
There's
aquamarine.
if we
Think it'll
had
ever
a
be like that? But we'll
if
all just be
we
wearing gray shirts and everything gray.
if we ever had like a wide enough, if we take enough time, I think that's almost inevitable if we decide to put energy in that direction. If we decide to focus more on psychology and and tapping out what is and what is not and what considers this and what brain activity is that, and we have a better understanding to the point that we start being able to label it in a way that we can then teach other people how to label it. If somebody is depressed at a varying level, they'd be able to tell you exactly what they feel, how they feel it, and it would be like basically assigned a number or a color equivalent for that emotion, and you would be able to communicate how you feel so much more effectively. And that would be amazing. That would be so helpful because you wouldn't have to try to have very difficult, very hard conversations to have that end up being more distressing than helpful sometimes. If somebody says, "Oh, how are you feeling?" You say, "Oh, I'm feeling kind of blue." Well, what does that mean? Right.
Natural language has like all the idiosyncrasies too, like the ambiguities.
Right. Yeah.
Not to
poetry.
drive this into a dumpster or anything, but Daryl, as usual, is not making sense.
Oh, dude, bring Daryl up here.
Here's what I
Daryl,
really
get
want. Oh,
here.
he's not going to talk. He's not going to go through the path of self-improvement. That would be asking too much. But here's what I'd ask
Oh dear.
Daryl and the Daryls out there is just have a look at the Nyquist theorem.
Don't
That's a
be
good
like
place to
Daryl.
start. Nyquist theorem. Now, why is that true? What's the best explanation we can find for why it's true? And we're doing that with concepts. We can't recreate the concept signal, quote unquote, accurately. We have to take little dots in it and recreate it based on some type of Nyquist criterion. That's your basic intuition. Start there.
I had an entire conversation that lasted like I don't even know if it's really done. I feel like that's gonna come up again. But we did a couple of we did streams on it. We were talking with Landon, and a few other people, and we were talking about whether or not color is real, like whether or not color exists in and of itself, or if it's an observation of a phenomenon and it's just the way we perceive it. It's not actually a real thing. A very interesting conversation, and it's just like you want to have like weird conversations about metaphysics. Like,
I think it's supposed to be a gotcha, where it's like, whoa, it's basically reframing of a solipsism.
oh god, never go
It's
full
a sort
solipsism.
of, we don't want to go to the cheap thrills, the cheap gotchas of something like solipsism. I don't think.
I don't feel like solipsism is even a gotcha. Solipsism to me just feels like okay, so what's the point? Like, you still have to live in a world where you have to behave and react as if solipsism is not the case. So what use is
No,
it?
you can just not care about solipsism and go
Right.
with the best way to deal with solipsism, which is appeal to authority.
Okay, fair.
I mean, I
I'm
guess
just
that the way
looking at
it's phrased is basically making the question impenetrable because everybody seems to think it means brain in a jar.
Right.
Well, they're both in a similar category of like the skeptical objections, which are just like, so what those objections are supposed to say is like, all right, we're starting from your like naive realism sort of assumptions that you might just like say like, the world seems like it's this way, like I guess it's just like that, or basically something like that. And
I think
then they'll
there's
come
something
along
to
and
be
say,
said for when your skepticism goes so far that you're not a skeptic anymore. You're just You're just a denialist.
yeah, I mean, like in this sense, like in a lot of cases, in like skepticism and philosophy is more about like, yeah, like when it's appropriate to doubt things, or like,
yeah,
to say like, all right, well, look, like here's a situation that's like totally consistent with like all of my other like observations, right? But like, so why is it that I think what I think about it, as opposed to this other thing that's like also like totally consistent with what I've seen, or something like that. But yeah, in a lot of cases, you may as well just go with like what's more, obvious, or I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have a reason to think something is true, then you may as well not think that it's true. But I guess they're sort of challenging the reasons and stuff like that too. I mean, there's a reason people have been talking about them for hundreds of years, but they're kind of something that will cut against everybody's positions on everything, and in that sense, like, I don't know that they're worth that much time, but.
Isn't it pretty easy to push against brain in a jar, at least to say the burden of proof is on the one making the claim because of the energetic necessity of creating such a setup?
You would have to.
No.
I think that would be a decent pushback. You just have to make sure that there are enough people that are aware that that's a problem.
Moreover, you're not actually solving the problem because the entities that are controlling your brain, if that's what's going on, how do they solve the problem?
Right.
Yeah.
Are they brains in a jar? I mean, there was a movie that this was the plot of.
Yeah, it's
If you
the
drove
infinite
to the end of the road or something.
problem of infinite
reality fell apart.
regress. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases, you can sort of just say, I mean, they're really attacking views that sort of say, well, I need like 100% certainty to have knowledge or something like that.
Well, then you get to the question of, is knowledge knowable?
Yeah, In which case, like, yeah, if you're talking about certainty, then, like, I mean, you know, at this point in, like, epistemology, you can basically just say, like, no, it's, like, there aren't very many, if any, things that we can be, like, totally certain about. And if you just kind of, like, accept that and, like, work that into your frameworks, then those sort of things just don't become as much of a problem anymore, in my opinion. But
Oh,
It
sorry.
wouldn't be a problem if we all agreed, but we don't, so it's a problem. Sorry, go ahead, Cheshire.
Sorry, I was just laughing at something on my computer. I didn't mean to interrupt. Somebody made a tier list for Avatar: The Last Airbender villains, and they have it listed S to D. There's nobody at D. C is the waterbending guy. B is nobody. A is all the other villains, and S is Nickelodeon. Savage. Sorry.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is my shit. I love that show.
Oh, I loved Avatar: The Last Airbender. That was for the Legend of Korra villains. I've seen that series a few too many times, probably.
I actually still need to watch Legend of Korra because I've only seen the beginning of it.
Legend of Korra is good, but it had production problems, so it ended up with some serious pacing issues and some serious like character development that was either skipped over or was like not very clear or was regressive. Like they developed and then went back and then developed again. That was mostly just production problems. That's why Nickelodeon's the bad guy. There's a lot of philosophy in that show, by the way, if you haven't watched it.
Yeah, I do like the first 3 seasons of like the original show quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
The scene where like Zuko goes back and talks to his dad is like literally makes me cry.
Oh. I love Uncle Iroh. Uncle Iroh's amazing.
Yeah, and there's a callback to like their relationship in that speech too, which is great. He's like, "Oh, your uncle has like gotten through," and or like something like that. He's like, "He's gotten through to you," and he's like, "Yeah."
I liked Azula. Azula's very good at playing head games.
Oh yeah, he's like schizophrenic or something. She's like bipolar.
She's fine, and then at the end of the series, she hits like a breaking point where like she is just way too overwhelmed, way too like there's too much going on. She's been betrayed by her friends, by the people she thought she could trust the most, and she just snaps. And so I don't know if she's bipolar, but she's certainly like she loses it. She's almost paranoid schizophrenic.
Yeah, like when they explain how she's able to lightning bend so easily and stuff like that, she's like, "Oh yeah, it's because she's like unstable." That's a good show. I feel like I don't have that many topics. They like baited me to come up here, and they just left me up here.
Anime's got, I mean, depending on who you ask, Avatar's not an anime. It depends on your definitions, basically. It's a whole semantic argument. But a lot of anime has a lot of philosophy. Like, a lot. Fruits Basket, there's a whole lot of philosophy that's has less to do with, like, the world kind of philosophy and more to do with philosophy of self, which is very interesting. Things like Fruits Basket, very much philosophy of self. Sometimes you get like overarching like philosophies around death and grief and stuff like that. Spiritual philosophies.
I know that's a manga, but I've never read it.
Fruits Basket?
Yeah, I think so, right?
Fruits Basket is it's an anime as well as a manga. It's gotten a re-release now. It's very much a story about emotionally broken characters coming together and healing their wounds through making new connections. And they're all broken in like different ways.
Pretty cool.
It is very interesting because a lot of the different characters have like kind of different philosophies of self, of how they kind of view themselves and how what they think is the most appropriate way to move forward for them. And some of them try to impose that on other characters, and in some ways they succeed, in some ways they don't. And so it's a very interesting like back and forth about a lesson in when it's appropriate to push your ideals on other people and when it isn't.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
It's very good. I definitely recommend it.
Currently playing Elite Dangerous, which I showed some people in chat earlier. It's a good show. It's good. Jesus Christ, good show. It's a good game. It's like you're flying a spaceship around, and you can like be a trucker in space, or you can be a combat person, or like you can explore and stuff like that. And the map is the size of the. It's like a 1-to-1 scale model of the Milky Way galaxy, and you can go to like they literally have like billions of stars that you can like technically actually go to in the game. It would just take you forever.
I think there was it Elite Dangerous? Maybe I'm thinking of there's a couple games that have like it would take you X amount of time to cross the universe, and it's like longer than your computer's ever going to be able to function for.
Yeah. It's probably one of those games. There's literally like if it's cross-platform between like PC and console and stuff like that, and if you're the first person to travel to a star, it puts your name on it in the game for like everybody else to see.
Very cool.
I've never done that because people have been playing this shit for way too long for me to find something like that, but it's also overly complicated and like doesn't really teach you anything about how to play the game, so kind of like Dark Souls in that way. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm being super boring, Jen. I don't know.
I could go to my list of go-to questions.
Dark Souls is about existentialism and nihilism. Yeah, the end of the world has happened no matter what. Which way do you choose to end it?
Did I get the full? Okay, here we go. I don't know why I get this microphone glitch.
I mean, there's like whole. I find thought experiments and theories about like games and movies and shows interesting, just because there's so many places and so much you can do and ways you can go with weird nonsense. Right? So you can get some really wacky theories and ideas out there. I have been enjoying watching ever since. I mean, it was pre FNAF, but Five Nights at Freddy's made it very, very popular to start having like these big existential mysteries in your games that sometimes like are meta, and so you actually have to solve it outside of the game itself. And I think that's fantastic. That is so cool. And so like, there's so much you can do in gaming when it comes out like games like Soma, which is exploring the philosophy of if you clone yourself when you die, are you still you? Right?
Yeah,
Stuff like that. It's a lot of fun.
I've always liked that idea. The movie The Prestige, for anybody who hasn't seen that movie,
Yeah.
totally go watch it. I was gonna say Portal is like one of those games, kind of, because like they put all this other stuff, like this writing in the background and everything that people focus on so much, like the cake is a lie, like all that. Like there's a whole thing about a previous person that was like in the same situation that you're in.
Yep.
You only see it through like random stuff that's like written on walls and stuff in the game.
I don't know. I'd enjoy stuff like that.
Yeah, and then there's like, I mean, there's whole like YouTube channels that are just dedicated to like talking about the lore of different books and stuff like that, and like, you know, it's like a book can be so
problem
infinite.
solving and creative problem solving and
Yeah, and people just being like, well, like, what would have happened to this character, like, after this, and blah, 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 because they don't fill in all the details.
I know you want me to talk about your theory that you love, but I don't want it to turn into a fight.
My theory?
The Evereshian quantum mechanical minimal complexity thing.
Mm. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean,
it's
like,
one thing
like
to say it's. You understand that it's one thing to say it's minimal complexity. It's quite a different matter to actually demonstrate it, right?
Ooh.
What does that mean to demonstrate something is the minimal complexity, whatever? And why do we know that that's good? What kind of value judgment is it?
I mean, I think it's like the idea of it is to just give you the most simplified way of describing like like basically what gives you the standard model, right? Like it's like I feel like that's what everybody in physics is trying to do, kind of. Like all the unification ideas are about doing that. So you know, like trying to bring all the fundamental forces together and all this. I was kind of talking about like Sean Carroll's, like it's not my theory because I don't even understand it like at that level, but like the Mad Dog Everettianism view of quantum mechanics, which is like many worlds, but like even more simplified. So it's like there's like one equation that describes like everything. There's also many worlds. So
kind of reminds me of what the org people are saying.
Which people?
The name escapes me right now, but org is the talking head for this
org
type of Hyperianism is what it is.
Oh.
It sounds like
No.
Hyperianism is what I was saying.
Oh no, I don't think it's that. I mean, it's not saying that like, oh, there's this math equation and like everything comes out of that. At least that's not how I look at it. I just look at it as like, you know, there's this like fundamental stuff, and like it acts a certain way, and like this equation is like how it acts. It's just like this is like a statement about how it acts, or something like that. Oh, man, did I go? Okay, never mind. Sorry.
It's fine. The audience is just asking if we have an opinion on medical marijuana, mushrooms, etc. I mean, it's sort of a different topic.
Oh yeah, 100%. All that.
I mean, I guess it's possible to ask the question in a way that's a little bit more on topic in that, like, do you think that it is something that can be used, or those things are something that can be used to help explore metaphysics and explore sort of beyond what you're able to process now and what that would mean for certain aspects of philosophy?
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, I think like depending on the person, right? Like I think like, you know, these things affect a lot of different people in different ways, and it's not really something that like I would recommend for everyone or something like that, you know. But I think people should be free to like make that decision also. So, and I guess it could maybe help you have like some creative thoughts or something like that. I don't know that it's like uh it's a reliable tool for that sort of thing or anything like that, but it doesn't mean it's not also enjoyable for people, and that like it's perfectly a good enough reason for me to say it should be legal, because I don't see a huge downside to having like marijuana and psychedelics be legal. That's my opinion, man.
I think I am going to take off. Very interesting. Thank you for having me, even though I was I guess I was kind of invited, but
No,
We're
it's very
very
nice to meet
happy
you.
you joined us. It helped smooth it out a lot, especially when you jumped in when you weren't sure, because I'm sure you're not the only one who had those kinds of questions.
Oh, that is why Steve keeps me around.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's been very nice. No worries.
Thank you very much. I appreciate a couple of the friend requests I got, and I'll be around. Feel free to hit me up.
All right, sounds good. Take it
Talk to
easy.
you later.
All right, Jen. Well, I don't know what the hell. Everybody left. I feel like everybody was like, "Nah, you can't have legal weed, man," and then everybody left. But no, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're judging me. You're judging me for my drug takes.
Not at all. No, it's an interesting topic. It's just my prior experiences that the topic of consciousness is problematic. So
So you
hard for me
can't
to.
talk about that because everybody will say that you're just like a hippie and like.
I don't know.
think-
I mean,
I don't
people
think
make
that,
arguments
Jen.
for psychedelics as like mind-altering substances to make you more, well, I don't know, open or something.
Yeah, it's like Clarence McKenna stuff. I mean, like, hey, like for some people, maybe. That's how I look at it. I'm just like, maybe for some people, but I don't know that it's something I'd be all like, everybody should do this, because I do think some people have a bad experience with that sort of stuff. Not me though. I'm fine.
Thinking that drugs are going to bring enlightenment is about as kooky as thinking that the universe is represented by a math equation.
Oh man, no, it's not. Listen,
it's a confusing and
I don't know for
insubstantial
sure
position.
I'm not saying for sure that the universe is like able to be described by a math equation, because I don't know. But if it is, I think it's probably something like that one. Is all.
Probably like the geometric form of a mushroom or something.
No, definitely not the mushroom thing.
Definitely not that. If it's going to be a math identity, it's not that one.
So the thing with that, right, is it's like it's tied in this knot. But if I just like untied it, it would just be a toroid, right?
You can't untie it. It's self-connected.
Why can't you? Wait, what? Why can't you untie it? It doesn't look like it can't be untied.
If you cut a sphere in two, it's not a sphere anymore. Same with this.
Yeah, but it's
irreducible
not.
Complexity.
Isn't it? But isn't it like still one surface the whole way through?
Yeah, it's
So it's
very
like,
hard to
it's
visualize.
like
That's why I made that one diagram that was supposed to make it easier to visualize that it has an inside-outside.
Yeah, you know, my
I'll post it
favorite
again.
thing is like the Mobius strip or like the Klein bottle or like those things.
Yeah, I think I actually will end up using the Mobius strip in my mathematical system. Seems to make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, the Klein bottle is like the 3D version.
Okay, but like, have you actually looked at the diagram with the good rendering of it, i.e. the one I didn't do?
Is that the shiny one?
The shiny one? Yes, it is the shiny one.
The one that has like the cutouts.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, it has an outside and an inside, and then I called it the outside inside. Because you can go from the outside of the object into it without ever touching the wall, and go to the other.
I
You
don't
can go through it without
understand
ever
the
touching the
knot in
wall.
the middle. What does the knot do though? Can you explain the knot
is
part?
the complement of the third least complex knot. I didn't invent topology.
No, I know, but like, what I don't get about it is it's like, what is it do, right? Because it's like
It's an
it's still like
information-rich primitive. It's something to use
if you were
instead of a particle.
but if
The
you were
particle
in
doesn't
the
actually work for
surface,
shit. A particle doesn't allow us to work with models that are actually intuitive because the primitives aren't information-rich enough.
but if you were
Particle
in
is
the
nothing.
if you were in the surface, it would just like now maybe I don't understand this. I don't know. I have to understand this better because I don't get how it's not just a straight line.
You're still in this thing of emotionally denying Platonism that I don't understand why. I
No,
don't
I
want
just
to
don't
seem like I'm trying to propagandize you or pressure you into a religious affiliation. It's just
I don't understand the shapes here. Like I don't get the shapes because it's like you're showing things like a digestive tract and like how this stuff works inside this, but that's all like because of gravity. Like there's a direction of stuff.
you have to think of the digestive tract, the whole body as a single
Yeah,
thing.
but like the reason that stuff's all like that is because of gravity.
Don't.
Well, you know what I
It's
mean,
not.
right?
Your explanation is not compelling. Period.
No. I'm talking about like the human body stuff, like the
We look
reason
the way
why.
we do because of gravity.
Yeah,
Like,
well, it's
Odyssey?
shaped that way because of gravity. Because you want to be able to. Yeah, because it uses gravity. Yeah.
Okay, so the HF8 complement is geodesic because of gravity. Then, okay,
No, but
it's gravity.
like, what's the directionality of this? So like, you have this thing here, right, in this diagram here. This
I will
thing.
put
Like,
another. How about I put another one? You can look at it ultra close and actually just try to figure out what the shape is. But
no, but
do you understand the argument? Do you understand why a perfect sphere
no.
is unobservable?
It's because I'm not a Platonist, bro. It's because it's like not a real thing. It's just an idea.
So what is observable then? If not ideas, what's observable?
I mean, observable, like meaning like in a scientific sense, or like because I mean, I could see a hallucination, right? Like I could observe a hallucination or something, right? But that's not
I don't
like
know. Can you?
I don't think that's what a scientific observable is. Because like
You want
I
to
can't.
reify certain classes of observables.
No.
Go ahead and say no.
I just think like empirical science is usually based on things that like multiple people can observe together. Usually. I mean,
right.
that is definitely part of it that people don't talk about very much because it's not just like you have
Look
to be
at
able
history.
to show your observations to other people.
How was calculus invented?
I mean, calculus is math.
How was it invented?
How was it invented? I mean, I have no fucking idea how the hell somebody comes up with something like calculus. That's always like fascinated me. So I don't know.
You're not going to be in the heads of the people who came up with it, but you can access their other writings. Leibniz.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
theist. Would you deny
I've never looked into their thought process of developing it. So I mean, I know it was designed to solve like problems like Achilles and the fucking tortoise and fucking Zeno's paradoxes and stuff like that. I know that that's why it came about, but dealing with infinity, that sort of thing. No, but like okay, but like look, you have these topology diagrams here, like where you have like hook and drain, right? For example. But like, what is this directionality?
Yeah, you're still struggling with pre-physicality because you can't get past the notion of something being pre-physical because you're stuck on a semantic divide between why a sphere is not observable versus why things are generally have a lack of knowability in their fundamental core, which are two completely different points.
Wait,
You're not going to agree with the position that an isolated electron is a spherical waveform, or wave, whatever, the quantum mechanical.
I mean, yeah, sure. Okay, you mean
Representation of
like
its distribution is spherical because of the symmetry principle. aka least
In,
action
like-
principle, aka geodesic, whatever you want to call it.
So you just mean like a world with just one electron in it?
You're familiar
Oh,
with
wait.
how science makes these approximations. I mean, thermodynamics is always about
No, I'm just asking.
quasi-isolated scenarios or isolated scenarios.
That's what you're talking about, right? Like hypothetically, you
Yes.
have one electron and that's it. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a spherical wave.
Okay, it's not a spherical wave. That doesn't make sense. But yeah, it has the property of sphericity because of a symmetry principle.
Well, it would be like.
But let me
spread out
finish
in
here.
space,
If we
right?
go to listen to me, I'm not done. Do you agree with what I've said so far?
Are you sure the universe is a sphere?
I didn't
Like,
fucking
in
say
that
it was a
sense?
sphere. I didn't fucking say it was a sphere. I need you to follow just this one line, just for now. That's it. If you want to understand this here, not a caricature of it, the actual thing. The
Okay.
only way to get to this point is to first understand the sphere because it's the most obvious one, and then just use the sphere and analogize it to that.
Okay.
So we've got this sphere. We haven't observed. It's a bit like the Schrodinger cat, right? It's the non-absolutely disgusting version of that thought experiment. So we've got a sphere, but let's say I say, guess what? I'm a skeptical prick who doesn't believe anything for no good reason. I want to actually go and validate that it's a sphere. I want to go measure it's a sphere, prove it. It's a sphere. We're gonna have to go and interfere with that system somehow. We know by the observation effect that it's going to deviate it from what it originally was, which we've inferred is a sphere, which we know whatever we observe isn't going to represent that perfect balance. Why? Because measurement fucks it up. Do we therefore conclude? Hang on a minute. What do we conclude from that? Do we conclude that real spheres don't exist? Well, no. That'd be stupid. What we conclude is that a sphere is unobservable because it is a preferred shape in this sense.
I mean,
because it's always there when it's unobserved. When we go to observe it, we're going to deviate it from what it was
I
always
understand
was before we
like
observed
what
it
you're
by the
saying.
observation interaction principle. This is like a
Yeah,
definitional sort of thing.
I get what you're saying, but at the same
Right.
time, like I feel like you're conflating it with the idea of like a perfect sphere, which is sort of something more like Euclidean, like you might say.
It's not Euclidean. A perfect sphere
Well,
is a
because it's
concept
not really a
that transcends the axiomatic containment that can be used to mathematically model such a
okay.
concept.
Look,
A sphere is
I've
just
never-
an idea.
I've never
Euclidean
understood.
axioms necessitate you to model that sphere in a particular way.
I've never understood that what you were starting with was the idea of like an electron that's in like
We're starting.
isolation.
We're starting with
So,
the
'cause,
principle
like,
of containment. I'm starting with
that's not
containment,
necessarily-
but I'm never going to teach containment to people who are not just like it's an
I'm just saying,
esoteric.
like,
I'm sorry, but it's an
when you say-
esoteric teaching.
when you try to link that with like the idea of a perfect sphere, which is like this other idea that we have from like geometry, like this electron thing is not really like, I mean, like if I'm being charitable, like yeah, like in my mind I think of it as like a sort of spherical wave, but that's not even right, really, because like what that actually would be is just a thing that's like spread out through all of space. And then it's like you're talking about what is the shape of all of space, and I don't know what that shape is, so we haven't specified that. So.
I never said it's the shape of all of space. Okay, if this shape brings about a mushroom, clearly not everything in the universe is a mushroom. That's nonsensical. But mushrooms do rise a lot. Now we can account for that.
I mean, you mean just like actual mushrooms? I don't know, dude. Not everything is shaped like a mushroom.
But there are a lot. Okay, the mushroom is a shape that accords with the HF8 complement. Okay, and the apple is also.
You bend it around, right? Like I feel like you can bend most shapes into most other shapes. You try really hard.
Not the way this is a continuous deformation. Obviously, it's under my own axioms of mathematics because I disallow this notion of disentanglement.
Disentanglement.
Well, the notion of the x and y axis is saying it is possible to have two things be purely at a right angle to each other, aka orthogonal.
Yeah.
Reality doesn't allow that.
I mean, I don't know that, or I guess. What is it? What do you mean? You mean perfect right angles? I don't know.
The construct of orthogonality.
I mean, if I have like a vector and I just like arbitrarily place some set of axes in some coordinate system, I can have components of vectors that are in orthogonal axes, and then I can talk about the parts of a vector that are in different axes.
We're not even talking about vectors, man. We're talking about pre-vectors. We're just talking about the Cartesian axes. The notion that it's possible for things to be orthogonal.
Vector spaces.
The notion that it's possible for the intersection of two things to be trivial, which is the notion of these perpendicular axes.
I mean, yeah, but they're like dimensions.
That's right. And dimensions in reality are entangled, which means they are dependently arising. Which means the notion of modeling them as non-dependently arising, as in independently arising, is fallacious.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think like, well, yeah, but that's what emergent space-time is about, right? Like you're trying to get space out of some more fundamental physical things, right? So, did we totally lose the audience? Are they gone? Oh no, they're still here. Fuck.
We're at 10 people, 11 if you count Nirvana. He's just being a champ.
I think Nirvana has been, yeah. I don't know what's going on, so I feel bad. But yeah,
I have been sorry.
Oh my god, he's here.
I have been here. I've been here the whole time. I'm fucking running Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories right now, trying to fucking beat this goddamn level, and I've been super like fucking focused on these like free duels that I've been doing, trying to like grind cards. So that's why I've been fucking really quiet. I've been like so fucking tilted. I sorry.
I don't know, you're good. I've like just noticed we were talking to Steve McRae. That's funny. Yeah, hopefully we get more guests for Steve McRae content. And I just honestly, I don't understand the mushroom. You're gonna have to try to explain that part to me again at some point.
Let's just start with the idea of the sphere being non-observable in a privileged way relative to other shapes due to it arising as a symmetric wave function potential.
Yeah, but that's only if space is shaped like uniformly like that.
The fact that space arises from space-time.
No. Because you were talking about an electron, right? Look, if you're going to talk about an electron, then you are going to talk that brings space.
Well, electrons floating around presupposes the existence of space.
Yeah. Well, even if it's a field.
Well, what does that mean, right?
No. Like even if it's so, I'm presuming what you mean is like we're talking about one electron. It's unbounded, so it's just like filling all of space.
Experiment. It's a thought experiment. It's like the Theseus ship thing. I'm trying to explain to you why this sphere is a privileged shape with regards to our particular dimensionality. It's not a circle. It's a sphere because we're in 3 physical dimensions.
What is it, like a 2-sphere, right?
Well, that's a different argument. That's about a photon field. That's saying, well, the photon field is going to repel itself maximally within this finite shape. Therefore, all its energy is going to be on the boundary. Therefore, we're going to argue for a 2-dimensional shape when we're modeling our photon fields. That's another step. Like, we haven't got to that step yet.
I thought the 2-sphere was just like the topology of like a 3D like closed like Euclidean space or whatever the fuck.
Well,
right?
That's not how we understand electrons in quantum. We understand them as a more or less spherical potential, right? Like there would be maximum in the center, but would expand the radius.
No, if there's only look, if there's only one electron, right, and that's all there is in the universe, it's gonna have the field is gonna have the same value at every point in space. So that's why I'm saying like, oh, do you mean like space is like spherically symmetric or something like that, or like it's like
I was talking about the potential of the electron.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if
Basement.
there's only one electron and that's it, and there's no other field interactions on top of it, it would be uniform. Like, there's nothing binding. There's nothing that it's
What about a
when you
helium atom then? What about a hydrogen atom then?
Okay. Yeah,
What
well,
shape is
that's gonna
that?
get that would be different. Yeah.
Well, it's like, how simple do I need to go before you're actually going to agree with the premise here?
Yeah, I mean, if you want it to be a hydrogen atom, that would be, because that's going to involve a lot more, though.
These thought experiments are meant to build up your intuition to deal with entangled space-time. Not to be
That's so much-
demonstrated
that's
as
so
some absolute truth about causality or anything like that. It's meant to show you problems in your own perceptual apparatus to say, oh, I can't trust my instinct on these particular
Oh,
things.
Well, look,
in
listen. Like,
particular.
here's the thing, though, right? Like, our perceptual apparatus is such a complicated physical system that it's never going to be part of a world like this that we'd be talking about with one electron in it. You see, like, our perceptual apparatus requires like fucking millions of electrons just to get off the ground. There would be nothing
Doesn't
like
mean
us
it
in
doesn't
these
have a
worlds.
unified potential.
But there would be nothing like us in the worlds that we're talking about that have like one electron.
You have
in
no grounds to make that assertion. And Daryl, you're being a fucking dumbass again. Daryl, it's
like
literally a definition that I'm listing there. I think it would be hard to disagree. Maybe there's other options for modeling it, but those are two of them.
Do you think like that there's something it's like to be a fucking hydrogen atom? Like,
well, it depends what we're defining as a criteria of acceptance for indistinguishability, irreducibility, whatever.
Do you think like a hydrogen atom has like an actual subjective experience or something like
You're
that?
presupposing your own conclusions that consciousness
No,
implies that there's the thing that it's like to be like something. It's like, no, you can't presuppose relationalism for a lot of reasons.
If you think that like an atom has like a subjective experience.
Thanks. How many times do I have to repeat myself? Its experience is 3 + 1, nothing else.
Yeah, but a rock like experience like falling on what, like I don't know, dude, in a puddle, like I don't know.
+1 is time, so time is always basically happening. So yeah, it can fall into something, and that's where the +1 is coming from. And the rock has no way to change its destiny in any way. So its consciousness is what you would call trivial.
Yeah, but 3 + 1 is just the dimensionality of like the.
And that happens. And if dimensionality happens to be fundamental, so what then? It's
No, but
fundamental in not the way that you're thinking. It's not fundamental in the way your impressions are saying it is, but it is fundamental.
I mean, I think that there's a reason why brains seem to be much more conscious than non-brains, things like that.
Because a brain is an amplifier for consciousness.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think I agree with that. Because that presupposes that there's just this thing for the brains to be amplifying, which, like, I don't think that exists. I just think brains are conscious.
And the thing being amplified is consciousness. You can't account. I've said this about 1,000 times. About a fucking 1,000 times. You can't account for the ordering of the brain. It has symmetry. You can't account for it. You're done.
You can't account for symmetry?
You can't account for symmetry in the brain.
Sure you can.
No, you can't.
I mean, the whole split brain thing, right? Like where people have.
I'm talking about the fact that I look at a brain and I notice that it has an axis of symmetry. That means that it's ordered.
Yeah, but so does like.
Tell me why it's ordered. You can't.
What do you mean? I don't. It's less information.
You're going to disagree and go into gaslight territory where you're going to deny that the brain has an axis of symmetry?
No, of course it does. The whole human body does.
Yeah, so why?
Well, I think part of it is because it's sort of like a compression.
Exactly. It's like you have no fucking answer. It's not compelling to say it's a compression. I'm talking about step by step. Walk me through it. How do you go from nothing to that?
Like, where does the symmetry start to come in like biological terms?
That's how you have to look at it to understand why we have the conclusions that we do.
Well, I mean, I would think that like the symmetry of like mammals in general is gonna go back. I mean, even fish have like symmetry.
But then
and
you have
like,
to answer, why don't rocks have these axes of symmetry?
because they're just fixed in random fucking ways.
So why is life one way and non-life a different way?
Well, because life is obviously like organisms are developing from like the genetic code,
I
right?
get that you think that you can answer this, but
Do you think?
can't.
Do you think like that? Do you agree with the idea that like that like genes program the phenotype?
Oh, not this again, for fuck's sakes.
Laughing. Like the morphology is like encoded by the DNA, right?
So what?
So what I'm saying is like, you know, the DNA is able to store a lot more information the more it can compress, and symmetry is a way of compressing information.
Okay. And what brings the symmetry?
Well, it was some evolutionary advantage at some point
Oh,
along
okay.
the line. Like you see
So
all the
you have
developments
no
happening.
physical mechanism to account for the symmetry. Is that right?
No, I mean
You're
I think
saying
symmetry.
evolution. Your answer is the same as strong atheist.
Well, look
Weak
at it this way.
argument.
There's different symmetries in different organisms. Obviously, like a jellyfish has like multiple axes of symmetry, and like you know mammals and fish tend to have like one. Jellyfish almost have like a rotational symmetry, which is cool. Octopus have like different symmetry, obviously too. But like, I mean, I think like you see progression from certain genetic lineages that establish like this like, you know, this one axis symmetry, and then it just sort of like continued onward from there. So like, if you had some gene that encoded like a limb or a change in a limb on one side, it would incorporate it on both sides. And
could you understand how someone might think that that's a faith statement?
No, it seems to make sense.
The gene is encoding for the limb. Ooh.
Well, no, because like they understand this stuff pretty well at this point, like in terms of gene
You want to
expression.
put faith. You want to put faith in your authority figure. But I'm a skeptic.
Well, look at it this way, right? Like, I mean, it seems like the people that have been working in this field for a long time have like a lot of results, and I don't really need to have faith in them because like I can just go like this, like, well, maybe they're wrong, you know, and I can just say that, well, maybe they're wrong. I don't know, but in terms of
I'm not okay with having my entire worldview invalidated on a dime. But if you are, good for you. But you can understand why someone might have trouble believing something like that.
I'll be honest with you, I am so okay with that. I actually want that. I would love for somebody to come along and show me how wrong I am about a lot of things, because then I can be more right, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's unfortunately not how it works. That doesn't work. That's not how it works in tradition, unfortunately.
What do you mean?
Just not how it works.
I'm not like so. I don't know. I don't care if I'm 100% right about everything right now. I don't need to be. Well, no,
you're
I don't.
Okay with the possibility that you're 0% right.
Yes. Of course I am. Of course.
Really?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's what I was saying earlier about all the skeptical objections and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you know, I could just totally be wrong. So could you. So could everybody. We could all just be wrong. Oh well.
Okay, Socrates, let's not make that leap just yet.
Well, it's not a leap because I can still just say like, well, here's what I think right now.
To say that you know that everything's fallible is self-negating, as usual. But most of these positions are.
That's not what I said.
Daryl wants to know what it means that the brain is highly symmetrical. Well, we would argue that we have to account for the symmetry. And so we would say, well, there's an animating form. Go ahead.
I love this rivalry between Jen and Daryl. It's like the best thing that's came from this fucking the server. It's like so fucking funny to watch. Y'all need to have a like stage. Quantum, could you imagine?
Nah, that guy's never gonna be C. He didn't know that. I mean, dude, you know what was the funniest thing was that when Steve McRae was like, yeah, 0.999 repeating equals 1. That is something that Daryl does not know, even though it's like literally pre-calc. Like your pre-calc teacher in high school should have told you that.
Oh yeah, Steve McRae. The first time it happened, he saw Daryl in the audience. And he goes, "Don't let that motherfucker up. He's a troll."
Oh, he knows Daryl. See, the funny thing too is that like I'm an old Steve McRae troll because I disagree with Steve about a bunch of things.
He was really charitable tonight.
I think he's grown a bit. He seems less like forceful about a lot of the stuff he used to say. He used to say things like in a really like condescending way.
Yeah. He seems like he
like,
really. I was really shocked to hear like how respectful he was about like Gaspar and Gaspar's ability to like defend his position. Like where he was like saying, he was like, I'm not anomalous. He was like, but Gaspar could like, he's like, I'm sure Gaspar could like totally defend it. And I was just like, that's a good sign.
Yeah, to be honest, like I was expecting him when he was like, Gaspar, I remember you and like we're cool. I was like, oh, maybe this is like a new Steve McRae. And honestly, like I'm cool with that because
Yeah, I had a damn good time tonight. Like he was funny. Like Cheshire's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's like, of course, I agree with him that like a lot of the atheists are like just morons and like don't understand what the fuck they're talking about.
I mean, how many atheists do you and I argue with over in the T-Jump server every day?
Right. I mean, and I'll even defend, like, I think even when he talks about the definitions and stuff like that, that like, yeah, like the thing is like I'm cool with any set of definitions that anybody wants to use for anything.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'll just change up how I'm using the words and go
exactly.
with what you.
That's what I told Gaspar. We were talking about that. I was like, I just let people define things how they want, and then I know that I'm confident enough in my ability to defend my position. Then it doesn't matter how they defined it,
Yeah. And it's also
I'm so upset that bit of the conversation between those two got cut out by my stupid streamers. It was such a good combo. I guess no one else got it back up.
I was very surprised at how well that went though. Like I thought that the arguments in main stage chat was a little bit cringe sometimes. But who the fuck am I? I had a lot of time. I appreciate everybody in the audience that's still stuck to, like you guys. There's only 5 of you in here, but you guys have thought that what we're talking about is worth a shit, or somehow we've fooled you into believing that we're intelligent.
And then there's Daryl, who's just sitting there with his hate boner, and he's currently listening.
But I mean, even Daryl, I appreciate you guys interacting in the server and constantly, showing us love. It goes without saying that without you guys, this server would not be a thing. I mean, I started the server fucking like a week after joining the T-Jump server because I expected to get banned because everybody there was getting banned by Scotty. And then me and Scotty became cool and I became a mod and then eventually an admin. So it didn't even pan out that way. So I just decided to treat this like a safe haven for like all the mods and people that I like have met, that I really, really respect. The mods that I have on this team are people that I think are very, very intellectual thinkers, like, and it's not just theist, atheist, or anything like that. I have Eddie. Eddie is a mod here, and I'm gonna be honest with you. If I were to debate Eddie, I don't know how it would go. I think Eddie's a little bit more red than I am. But like I said, that's why
he has a good like spread of all of the different arguments for the most part.
Yeah, I like that. Eddie's form of argumentation is actually really convincing. Not in the sense of like me saying that he has me convinced or anything like that, but I mean like as in like if I was somebody who was very, torn on what to believe, and I was to talk to Eddie, I think that like his honest approach, saying like I'm an agnostic theist, I have belief in a God, but I don't know that God exists. I think that's really a respectable position, especially the way he defends it. He defends it honestly. Really cool.
Yeah, there's not a lot of people that take that route.
Yeah, I've met a few on here. I think Sunken Shaman might be the closest other person that I've come to that takes that position, kind of. I know also that I really like Good Faith, although I think that Good Faith is a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, he's a Jay Dyer guy.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, there is, but there's not. I'm kidding. There's nothing.
I think those guys are better for like pre-sub type people.
Well, I also like, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Like when it comes to like talking about people who are pre-subs, I don't think that Jay Dyer is like a complete like abhorrent piece of shit. Like I think that Darth Dawkins is, or like I think that who are some other pre-subs? I mean, who the fuck else cares about anybody else? I guess the Catholic traditionalist is kind of an asshole. Hey, why won't you, Jay? Why won't you debate Brother Peter Diamond? He just he sits with his hand up in fucking audience for like 2 hours straight, and that's what he asks. Like what an asshole.
We need to get more like ridiculous people in here sometimes.
Maybe I try to keep the ridiculous people out of here.
Yeah.
I think trolling is really funny. I think that the small PP role, photo verified. I think that that's like my favorite role that we have now.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. Thank you.
No, I thought of the photo verification joke afterwards. Like,
No, that was perfect. I felt bad because I had invited Detroiter up, and I figured like, oh, he would just like not join if he didn't have anything to say. And then he just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, fuck, okay.
Did he go? Somebody invited me up here. So, dude, I'm having my first like one-on-one with Detroiter tomorrow. It's gonna be really interesting. I would much rather pay $25 to talk to Detroiter than pay $100 to talk to fucking Tom Jump and learn philosophy from him.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to sit in on that. That'd be kind of fun.
Dude, pay $25. You totally could. I mean, I support.
Make a killing if he charged $25.
Huh?
I said he could make a killing, dude.
Yeah, I mean, like,
you want to all pay $25?
Dude, yeah, it's like I mean, even if I wasn't getting like it's not even really pay $25 for a philosophy class, like he's setting it up for me, right? It's like he is setting up this kind of in a special way for me. I think like he's doing one-on-ones, right? But like we're also going to be talking about like learning philosophy, and his Patreon has pay $25 for the special Discord, and you get the reading materials and stuff that he's reading, right? But it doesn't have like basically what he's giving me. So I think he's kind of hooking me up. I'm definitely was not expecting to like, I was definitely not expecting to pay $25 and have a class. I was expecting to pay like $100, because I honestly think he's super undercharging me, because Detroiter is like, it's like what Darth Ariana said. He's like an encyclopedia of philosophy.
I pay him $30 and just listen to your thing with him.
I'd be so fucking down for that. Honestly, message him. I mean, seriously, just message him. Honestly, if you're not gonna pay the $30, I'd pay for you. I don't care.
I mean, I'll pay him.
Dude, I even if I wasn't learning philosophy, I still support Detroiter because I like Detroiter. I think that Detroiter is like I think it's so funny that Scotty thinks that Detroiter is a troll, because he's like the opposite of a troll.
He has some troll friends. Like, I'll give him that, but
oh hell yeah, he does. He has people like Venus and fucking
That guy dumb it down in his server is like a troll.
Yeah, I think it's
Quick.
funny. Oh yeah, what was it, Tofi?
I like Tofi. Tofi's fine.
Scotty hates Tofi.
Tofi is just like I don't know. He has his own server that's fine. That's like fine.
I really like every time since I had that bad interaction with Venus, I actually really like Venus. I've come to really like him and
I
respect
like
him.
him too, and like the first time I ever talked to him was like in AY's Discord. I like jumped into a fucking like voice chat, and I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about, man?" Like, the funny thing was is that I actually got him on his heels at one point, and it was something that I had like never heard of, and it was like an argument that he was like super well versed in, and I think I put him on his heels because it was this whole thing about like theories that have more predictions are like less likely, basically.
Oh yeah, that was in Tom's server, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
it moved into Tom's server at one point because like I started talking to him in Ask Yourselves Discord.
Yeah.
And it's like I was eventually just like, all right, what if I have a theory like most scientific theories that makes like an infinite number of predictions for like different cases? Like I was like, how do you evaluate that? Because you can't enumerate the number of predictions that it makes anymore and stuff like that. So
dude, he was drunk, or I guess he was drunk. I was drunk. I know that for damn sure. I was drunk and sitting in Dex's room, and I was just, you know how I am when I'm drunk. I'm fucking a little bit belligerent. Not belligerent in the sense of like I'm an asshole, but like I argue a little bit more dickishly. Uh, if I'm not arguing, I'm fine. But like he hopped in, and I can't remember what he said. We were talking about like trans rights and stuff like that, and I mentioned something about like philosophy and psychology having a like overlap in like the field and stuff like that, like which he hopped in and like totally rejected for some reason, and thought that I was saying that philosophy and psychology are the same subject matter. And like I told him that that's not what I was saying, and I was saying that there is a like a philosophical field of that has to do with philosophy, psychology. Like there's a philosophy of psychology.
yeah,
And then like we got into like talking about like the scientific method for some. I don't even remember what brought this up at this point, but like we started talking about the scientific method. And he goes, there is no. I can't do it. There's no such thing as a scientific method. It's like it's a myth. It's like an urban legend. It's a rumor. And I'm like, are you talking about like how there's no like unified scientific method like that people like all adhere to? I guess like I was really drunk, so I don't want to know, like I don't want to misrepresent the guy. But he like sent me this SEP article, and it was exactly what I was talking about, like how there's no like agreed upon scientific method really.
yeah.
But that doesn't like mean that there's like not a use for like having a methodology behind um like I guess collecting like sense data and then like making predictions with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's still something there that people are talking about in general. But
Yeah,
we should
like
definitely do a drunk hangout at some point. We should all get drunk.
yeah, it was really funny. I ended up banning him and then messaging him, telling him I'm sorry and that I need to be better about not banning people so fast. Like 5 minutes later, and then made a public apology. I was so fucking drunk. Oh my god, I was like, I had just like got off the phone with my girlfriend at the time, and like, it was really fucking.
Are
Jesus
you fine?
Christ. I was
I
saying,
gotta hop off. I gotta hop off here and like get some shut eye, but
yeah, me too, y'all. I enjoyed it though. Thanks everybody for hopping in. Glad that you guys think that we have an interesting thing going here, even if it's 5 of you. If you guys want to continue the after show discussion, we can hop in general chat or something. Maybe I'll be around for a little bit longer if you guys want to hop in there or not. But um, If not, then I hope you all have a good night and appreciate y'all showing up to the Steve McRae AMA. We'll try to do more of these